The expression magic tore reality like wet paper. Somewhere beneath the old Fells church cemetery, a coven of desperate witches chanted words that should never have been spoken, drawing power from a massacre they'd orchestrated in secret. 12 bodies cooling in the earth above them. 12 souls screaming into the void. They wanted to pierce the veil between life and death, to bring back what nature had taken. What they got instead was something far worse. The dimensional rift opened not to the other side, that purgatory where dead supernaturals lingered, but to somewhere deeper, somewhere burning. A realm where the guilty faced eternal judgment, where a spirit of vengeance rode endlessly hunting those who'd escaped justice. And for one moment, just one terrible moment, that realm touched Mystic Falls, Virginia, and the witches' screams were brief. The hellfire that consumed them was not. Johnny Blaze erupted onto the back roads outside Mystic Falls, astride a motorcycle wreathed in flames that burned with supernatural intensity. The night itself seemed to recoil from him. Where moments before he'd been riding through the scorched highways of his own hell dimension, tracking a soul that had escaped judgment, now he found himself on a dark Virginia road lined with trees whose branches formed a canopy overhead. The scent of the air was wrong, too humid, too alive. This wasn't hell, but the guilty were everywhere. The Ghost Rider's flaming skull turned slowly, scanning the darkness with eye sockets that burned with otherworldly fire. His leather jacket smoldered at the edges. The chain wrapped around his torso clinked with each breath he didn't technically need to take. And through the spirit of vengeance that inhabited him, Johnny Blaze felt something he'd never experienced before, a town so saturated with supernatural sin that it registered like a beacon. Vampires. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Their crimes staining the very ground. The motorcycle's engine roared, a sound like tortured souls screaming, and Ghost Rider surged forward. Trees blurred past. The speed was impossible, physics defying, but he was beyond such limitations. A deer froze in his path and then bolted, some primal instinct recognizing a predator that transcended the natural order. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't need to. The spirit of vengeance could sense guilt like a bloodhound scenting prey, and in this place, of the trail, was overwhelming. Every direction called to him, every shadow seemed to hide something that deserved judgment. But one location pulsed stronger than the others, a large house on the outskirts of town where the concentration of supernatural evil was so dense it felt like standing next to a bonfire. The Salvatore boarding house appeared through the trees, its antebellum architecture speaking of old Southern money and older secrets. Lights glowed in the windows. Voices carried on the night air, laughter, music, the clink of glasses. A party. How appropriate. The guilty always celebrated, thinking themselves beyond consequences. Ghost Rider dismounted in the circular driveway, his boots hitting the gravel with enough force to crack the stones beneath. The motorcycle's flames died to embers, but didn't extinguish entirely. He'd need it again. He always did. The chain unwound from his torso with a metallic whisper, 12 feet of hellfire-forged links that moved like a living serpent in his skeletal hand. The front door stood before him, painted black, with an ornate knocker that had probably welcomed guests for over a century. Ghost Rider didn't bother with such niceties. His palm touched the wood. Hellfire spread across the surface like spilled gasoline igniting, orange and red flames that consumed without heat unless you were guilty. Then they burned hotter than any earthly fire could manage. The door exploded inward, transformed to ash in seconds. Inside, the party stopped. A dozen faces turned toward the doorway, beautiful faces, eternally young, with that peculiar stillness that marked them as predators wearing human skin. Vampires, all of them. But their eyes held that telltale darkness, that predatory focus. One held a glass of blood, not even bothering to disguise it as wine. "What the hell?" one of them started. Ghost Rider's voice emerged as a chorus of the damned, layered with echoes of every soul he'd ever judged. "Your souls are stained with the blood of the innocent." The vampires moved with supernatural speed, blurring across the room in that impossible way they had. But Ghost Rider was faster. The chain whipped out, wrapping around the nearest vampire's throat. Hellfire ignited along its length. The vampire, a young woman with blonde hair who'd probably been turned in the 1950s based on the vintage of her crimes, screamed as the flames found every murder she'd committed, every life she'd drained, every family she'd destroyed. The Penance stare came naturally. The Ghost Rider's burning eye sockets locked onto hers. "Look into my eyes." She couldn't resist. Vampires were used to being the ones who compelled, who controlled with their gaze. This was different. This was something older, something that predated their curse. The spirit of vengeance showed her everything. Every victim's final moments of terror, every drop of blood spilled in her 100-year feeding spree, every parent who'd mourned a missing child. She felt it all. Every second of pain she'd caused, compressed into heartbeats. Her scream transcended sound, became something primal and raw. When Ghost Rider released her, she crumpled to the floor, catatonic, her mind shattered by the weight of her own sins. The other vampires attacked as one. 11 of them, moving in that coordinated way that suggested they'd hunted together before. The claws extended. Fangs descended. One of them, faster than the rest, actually managed to drive his hand toward Ghost Rider's chest, aiming for where a heart would be. His fingers met hellfire-wreathed bone and burned to ash. The vampire reeled back, staring at the stumps of his fingers in disbelief. "What are you?" "Vengeance." The chain became a whirlwind of judgment. Each link that connected sent hellfire racing through undead nervous systems. These weren't normal flames. They didn't just burn flesh. They burned souls, ignited guilt, made the condemned feel every sin as a physical agony. One vampire combusted entirely, his crimes too numerous to withstand even a glancing blow. Another fell to her knees, weeping blood as the fire showed her a century of murder played out in reverse. From the top of the stairs, a voice cut through the chaos. "Sounds enough." Two men stood on the landing. Brothers, clearly, though their styles diverged sharply. The one who'd spoken wore a leather jacket and had dark hair swept back, his blue eyes hard with the kind of calculated cruelty that came from decades of practice. The other was younger looking, with softer features but eyes that held an ocean of regret. Stefan and Damon Salvatore. Ghost Rider knew their names instantly. The spirit of vengeance whispered their crimes like a litany. The Ripper of Monterey, the monster of Mystic Falls. Brothers who'd spent 145 years drowning in blood. Damon's expression was pure predatory assessment. "I don't know what you are, Skeletor, but you just burned through 11 of my acquaintances. That's rude even by my standards." Stefan's hand settled on his brother's arm, a warning gesture. "Damon, this isn't a vampire. Look at it." "Oh, I'm looking, brother. I'm seeing flaming skull, chains, bad attitude. Sort of like Klaus on a particularly murderous Tuesday." Ghost Rider advanced up the stairs, his boots leaving scorch marks on the hardwood. "Stefan Salvatore, Damon Salvatore, your sins number in the thousands." Stefan went very still, that supernatural vampire stillness that made them look like statues. "I know what I've done." "Then you know why I'm here." Damon, however, laughed, sharp and bitter. "Let me guess, big bad demon thing here to punish the evil vampires? Hate to break it to you, Ryder, but we've got a line forming for that job. You'll need to take a number." The chain lashed out faster than even vampire reflexes could track. It wrapped around Damon's torso, yanked him off the landing. He hit the ground floor hard enough to crater the marble, and hellfire raced across his body. His screams were immediate and raw, not the pain of burning flesh, but something deeper. The fire was making him feel it all. Every neck he'd snapped, every heart he'd torn out, every compulsion that had ruined a human life. Stefan blurred into motion, vamping down the stairs with that impossible speed. "Let him go!" Ghost Rider's free hand caught Stefan by the throat, lifting him off the ground. The younger Salvatore's hands gripped the skeletal fingers, and where flesh met bone, Stefan's skin began to smoke. "You reformed, you drink animal blood, you seek redemption." Stefan's eyes widened, surprise cutting through the pain. "How do you?" "I see everything, every kill, every victim, every attempt to atone." Ghost Rider pulled Stefan closer, and the flames dancing between them. "But atonement does not erase sin. The blood you spilled still cries out." From outside, tires squealed on gravel. Car doors slammed. Footsteps running, multiple people, moving with human speed and supernatural urgency. A woman's voice, young and frightened. "What's happening? I felt the magic from town." Ghost Rider turned toward the destroyed doorway. A teenage girl stood there, maybe 17, with long brown hair and wide eyes that marked her as human, but the air around her crackled with latent power. A witch. Behind her, more humans. Another young woman with blonde hair, a man with darker skin who moved like he had military training, and another girl, identical to the first. Doppelganger. The word rose unbidden from the spirit of vengeance's knowledge. Two faces, one soul, split across time, and one of them was the witch. The other, Elena Gilbert, the supernatural world's current fixation. The bloodline that Klaus needed for his hybrid curse. Ghost Rider sensed the weight of destiny on her, the cosmic importance that had nothing to do with her own choices and everything to do with ancient magic she'd never asked for. The witch, Bonnie Bennett, the spirit whispered, raised her hands. Magic sparked between her fingers, green and gold and powerful. "Release them. Now." Ghost Rider regarded her with burning eye sockets. "You defend vampires, witch." "I defend my friends." Bonnie's voice was steady despite the fear Ghost Rider could smell on her. "I don't know what you are, but you're not from here. You're disrupting the balance." "I am the balance. I am the judgment the guilty cannot escape." "In your world, to maybe." Bonnie stepped forward, her friends trying to hold her back, but she shrugged them off. "Here, we have different rules. Here, people can change. Stefan changed. Even Damon is trying." She glanced at Damon, still writhing in the chain's grip, in his own terrible way. Ghost Rider's grip on Stefan loosened slightly. The vampire dropped to one knee, gasping unnecessarily, an old habit from when breathing mattered. The guilty do not deserve mercy. "Everyone deserves a chance at redemption," Elena said, her voice carrying that peculiar moral certainty of the very young. "That's what makes us different from monsters." The Ghost Rider's flames flickered, just for a moment. Somewhere deep inside the inferno, Johnny Blaze stirred. The girl's words had found something in him, some memory of his own quest for redemption, and his own struggle against the demon that rode him. But the spirit of vengeance was not so easily swayed. "You know nothing of monsters, child. You live among them. You love them." His burning gaze fixed on Stefan. "This one has torn through cities like a plague, and you call him friend." "I call him family," Elena said quietly. From the floor, Damon managed to gasp out between waves of agony. "Hate to interrupt this touching moment, but could someone, maybe, get Satan's motorcycle enthusiast off me?" Bonnie's hands moved in complex patterns, her lips forming words in a language older than English. Latin, the traditional tongue of Bennett witches. The air thickened with power. Candles throughout the house spontaneously ignited. The remaining vampires, those who'd survived Ghost Rider's initial assault, fled with supernatural speed, disappearing into the Virginia night. The spell hit Ghost Rider like a physical force. Invisible chains wrapped around him, not of metal but of pure, magical energy, drawing power from the earth itself, from the ancestors Bonnie channeled, from the natural order that vampires violated simply by existing. It didn't hurt exactly, but it felt wrong, like trying to move through concrete. The hellfire chain fell away from Damon. Stefan caught his brother as he collapsed, both of them retreating across the room. Ghost Rider turned his full attention to Bonnie, and for a moment she faltered. Looking into those burning eye sockets was like staring into damnation itself. Witch, you play with forces you don't understand. I understand enough. Bonnie's hands trembled, but her voice held firm. The sweat beaded on her forehead. The spell was costing her. You're from another dimension, another hell. You don't belong here, and your presence is creating an imbalance. I go where the guilty hide, and this place, Ghost Rider gestured at the town beyond the house, reeks of unpunished sin. Then you'll be here forever, Stefan said, his voice rough. He'd managed to get Damon propped against a wall. The older Salvatore was healing, his vampire nature already knitting the spiritual damage the hellfire had caused. Mystic Falls has more supernatural beings per capita than anywhere else in the country. Maybe the world. You want to judge us all? Get in line behind Klaus, Mikael, every vampire hunter in Virginia, and the Founders Council. Ghost Rider took a step forward. Bonnie's binding spell held, but barely. The flames around his skull intensified, and where his boots touched the floor, the wood began to char. Klaus, original vampire, hybrid, murderer of thousands across a millennium. Everyone in the room went very still. You know about Klaus. Caroline, the blonde vampire, Ghost Rider identified, spoke for the first time. How could you possibly? I see sins. I see crimes. I see the weight of every soul taken. Ghost Rider's voice dropped lower, becoming almost contemplative. And Klaus Mikaelson's sins are extensive. Elena and Bonnie exchanged a look. Some silent communication passed between them, the kind that came from years of friendship. Finally, Elena spoke. Klaus is planning a ritual. In 2 days, he needs me, needs my blood, to break a curse and become a hybrid. Ours, he's going to kill me. Then he will face judgment. That's not. Elena stepped closer, despite Caroline's hiss of warning. That's not the point. We're trying to stop him without anyone dying. There has to be another way. Ghost Rider's flames crackled. There is always another way. Death. Damon, recovered enough to be sardonic, laughed weakly. I'm starting to like this guy. Very practical. Very burn first, ask questions never. Damon, shut up, Stefan said without heat. His attention remained fixed on Ghost Rider. If you want Klaus, we can help you find him, but Bonnie's right. You're creating a magical imbalance just by being here. 2 hell dimensions touching the same reality. That's not sustainable. Bonnie nodded, her concentration never wavering on the binding spell. I can feel it. Every Bennett witch back to Ayana can feel it. Your hell and our hell. She stopped. We have a hell dimension here. A psychic named Cade who rules it. Your presence is making the barrier between dimensions thinner. Ghost Rider considered this. The spirit of vengeance understood cosmic balance, understood that some rules transcended dimensions. If his presence was genuinely threatening the fabric of reality here, but the guilty still deserved punishment. I will find Klaus, Ghost Rider declared. I will judge him, and when I am done, nature will rebalance itself or it will burn. Either outcome is acceptable. He moved then, faster than Bonnie's spell could compensate for, faster than the vampires could react. The binding shattered with a sound like breaking glass. Hellfire erupted outward in a wave that sent everyone stumbling back. When the flames cleared, Ghost Rider was gone, leaving only scorch marks on the floor and the distant roar of his motorcycle fading into the Virginia night. Elena was the first to speak, her voice small. What the hell was that? Stefan's expression was grim. Something that makes Klaus look like a minor problem. Damon pulled himself fully upright, his usual smirk notably absent. Did anyone else feel that? The Penance stare thing? Because I'm pretty sure I just experienced every terrible thing I've ever done, and let me tell you, it was not a highlight reel I'd recommend. Bonnie's hands dropped, the magic dissipating. She swayed and Caroline caught her. I need to call the ancestors. We need guidance. That thing, he's right. He is vengeance. Pure, absolute, without mercy or redemption. If he goes after Klaus? Klaus has survived 1,000 years of people trying to kill him, Elena said, but her voice lacked conviction. Stefan shook his head slowly. Not people like that. That thing isn't trying to kill Klaus. It's trying to judge him, and Klaus... He trailed off, his own guilt about his Ripper years still fresh in his memory of the Penance stare's touch. Klaus has 1,000 years of sins. If that demon shows him even a fraction of what he's done. It'll break him, Damon finished, completely and utterly. Even an original can't withstand that kind of psychological assault. Outside, somewhere in Mystic Falls' dark streets, a flaming skull hunted through the night, following the scent of the guilty toward an original vampire who had no idea what was coming for him. Klaus Mikaelson was having a celebratory drink when reality caught fire outside his window. The hybrid stood in the living room of the estate he'd commandeered, a beautiful piece of property that had belonged to the Lockwood family until very recently, when Klaus had decided he preferred its location and compelled the owners to simply forget they lived there. Old money, old architecture, and most importantly, close enough to the quarry where he'd performed the ritual in 2 nights. He swirled the bourbon in his crystal glass, watching the amber liquid catch the lamplight. Beside him, his sister Rebecca examined her nails with studied disinterest, while Elijah stood by the fireplace in his customary 3-piece suit, the very picture of sophisticated patience. I still think you're being premature with the celebration, Elijah said, his accent carrying centuries of European refinement. The doppelganger is still protected by the Salvatores, and Bonnie Bennett grows more powerful each day. Klaus smiled, the particular smile that had preceded massacres across continents. Which is why I've already arranged for the werewolf, the vampire, and the doppelganger. All the pieces are in play. In 48 hours, I'll be complete, the first true hybrid in existence. Rebecca looked up from her manicure. And then what, Nick? You'll create more hybrids loyal only to you. Build your army. We've been running for 1,000 years, and now you want to start a war? I want to be free, Rebecca. Free of our father's pursuit. Free of the limitations that have bound me. Klaus drained his bourbon. And once I am, because anyone who stood against me will learn what it means to cross a... The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees in an instant. The windows frosted over, and outside, the night itself seemed to recoil from something burning brighter than hellfire. Elijah moved to the window with vampire speed, his expression shifting from curiosity to genuine alarm. What in God's name? The words died as Ghost Rider crashed through the wall. Not through the door, not through the window, through the solid brick and mortar of the Lockwood Estate's exterior wall, erupting into the room astride his flaming motorcycle, hellfire trailing behind him like the wake of a comet. The impact sent furniture flying. The priceless Persian rug ignited. Klaus's bourbon glass shattered on the floor. The motorcycle skidded to a halt in the center of the room, as its tires leaving molten tracks on the hardwood. Ghost Rider dismounted in one fluid motion, the chain already unwinding from his torso. The flames of his skull burned so intensely that shadows fled to the corners of the room and cowered there. For a long moment, the originals simply stared. They'd seen many things across their millennium of existence. Werewolves, witches, vampires of every lineage, dark magic that could reshape reality. But this was new. Klaus recovered first, his hybrid nature surging to the surface. His eyes shifted to that distinctive amber, fangs descending, the predator that had survived 1,000 years recognizing a genuine threat. "I don't know what you are, mate, but you've just made a very large mistake." Ghost Rider's burning eye sockets fixed on Klaus with an intensity that made the hybrid actually take a step back. Klaus Mikaelson, also known as Niklaus, the Destroyer, the Beast, the original hybrid. Rebecca had vamped across the room, putting distance between herself and the intruder. "Nick, it knows you." "I know everything." Ghost Rider's voice reverberated with otherworldly power. "Every crime, every murder, every innocent life taken across 1,000 years of bloodshed." Elijah moved with supernatural precision, blurring behind Ghost Rider, his hand aiming for the spine, a killing move that would drop even the strongest vampire. His fingers met bone wreathed in hellfire and simply stopped. The flames didn't burn his flesh immediately, but Elijah felt something far worse. A searing pain that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with judgment. Elijah Mikaelson, the noble one, the suit. Ghost Rider didn't even turn to look at him. "You hide your sins behind honor and family loyalty, but I see the bodies you've buried in their name." Elijah withdrew his hand, staring at the blackened fingertips that were already healing. "What manner of creature are you?" "Vengeance." Klaus laughed, sharp and manic. "Oh, this is rich. Another mystical entity here to pass judgment on the big bad hybrid. Join the queue, Skeletor. We've got werewolf curses, vampire hunters, dear old Dad Mikkel, and half the supernatural world already trying to kill me. You'll have to do better than parlor tricks and ominous proclamations." The chain moved so fast it was nearly invisible. At one moment, Klaus was standing 20 feet away. The next, the hellfire-forged links had wrapped around his torso, pinning his arms, and yanked him across the room directly into Ghost Rider's grip. The skeletal hand closed around Klaus's throat. The hybrid struggled. 1,000-year-old strength that could tear through steel, hybrid nature that made him faster and stronger than any vampire. None of it mattered. Ghost Rider held him like a father, holding a misbehaving child. "Look into my eyes." Klaus tried to resist, tried to use the compulsion that originals wielded with such devastating effect, tried to summon the hybrid rage that had allowed him to survive millennium. But the Penance stare was not something you could fight with supernatural powers. It was older than vampires, older than curses, older than civilization itself. Weighing their eyes locked, and Klaus saw. He saw every life he'd taken, starting with the first, the werewolf whose death had triggered his curse, whose blood had stained his hands and begun a cascade of violence that would span continents and centuries. He felt that man's final moments of confusion and terror, felt the grief of the family who never knew what happened to him. Then the second victim, the third, the 10th, the 100th. The village he'd slaughtered in Romania in 1492 because one person had insulted Rebecca. 93 people. He felt every death. The mother clutching her infant as his fangs found her throat. The father trying to protect his family with a pitchfork against a creature that could move faster than thought. The children crying in the church where he'd trapped them before setting it ablaze. The woman in France, 1702, a son who'd caught his eye with her beauty. He'd pursued her, courted her, won her heart. And when she discovered what he was and tried to flee, he'd killed her entire family in front of her before compelling her to forget, to love him again. He'd kept her for 3 years before growing bored. He felt her heart break, her horror, the moment her compulsion broke and she remembered everything before throwing herself from the cliff. The werewolf packs he'd hunted for sport across Europe. Dozens of them, men, women, cubs barely old enough to trigger their curse. He felt each transformation, each moment of agony as they died trying to protect their own. The art teacher in Italy who'd taken him on as a student, who'd seen promise in his work, who'd become a father figure. Klaus had drained him dry the night before his wedding because the man had gently suggested Klaus's paintings showed more anger than beauty. He felt the betrayal, the confusion, the final thought. Why? The timeline accelerated. Centuries compressed into moments. The Penance stare showed him everything, not just the deaths, but the ripples. The orphans created, the lovers separated, the futures stolen. Every victim had been someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. Every death had created a void that echoed through time. He saw his own mother's death, the one he'd caused, the original sin that had set him on this path. He felt her final moments not from his perspective, but from hers. The shock, the betrayal, the mother's heartbreak as her son's fangs found her throat. He saw Stefan, the Ripper he'd created, and the young vampire he'd compelled and corrupted into a killing machine for his own amusement. He felt every victim Stefan had claimed under his influence, and the weight of responsibility for turning a struggling vampire into a monster. The hybrid ritual failures. The dozens of werewolves he'd tested his curse-breaking theories on, watching them die in agony as their bodies tried and failed to complete the transformation. He'd called it necessary. The Penance stare showed him their final moments. The pain, the hope that this time it would work, the disappointment as death claimed them. The compulsions, thousands of them, people whose minds he'd violated, whose free will he'd stripped away, who'd become puppets dancing on his strings. Some for minutes, some for years. Some who'd never recovered their full agency, because who'd spent the rest of their lives wondering what was real and what was Klaus's command. The servants he'd murdered for minor infractions, the vampires he'd killed for sport, the werewolves he'd tortured for information, the witches who'd refused to help him and paid with their lives and the lives of their covens. He saw Jenna Summers, Elena's aunt, who would die in 2 nights as the vampire sacrifice for his ritual. The Penance stare showed him her death before it happened, let him feel what she would experience, the terror and confusion and heartbreak. Every single sin. Klaus screamed. It started as a roar of defiance, but became something else entirely, a sound of pure anguish, of a psyche breaking under the weight of 1,000 years of accumulated guilt. His hybrid face distorted further, veins standing out in black ridges. But it wasn't rage. It was agony. This is what you are, Klaus Mikaelson. This is the legacy of your 1,000 years. Rebecca moved to help her brother, but Elijah caught her arm. Don't, you'll only suffer the same fate. He's killing Nick. No. Elijah's expression was complicated, centuries of complicated sibling dynamics playing across his aristocratic features. He's showing him the truth. Something perhaps we all needed to see. Ghost Rider released Klaus. The hybrid collapsed to the floor, shaking, his eyes unfocused. Blood tears streamed down his face, a vampire's way of crying. He was making sounds that weren't quite words, just broken fragments of apologies in languages living and dead. Rebecca pulled free from Elijah and rushed to Klaus's side, cradling his head. Nick, can you hear me? Klaus's eyes found hers, but the madness in them was like nothing she'd seen before. Not the controlled violence he usually wielded, but genuine fractured horror. I saw all of them, Becca. Every face, every name. I remember all of them. As you should. Ghost Rider stood over the broken original, as every murderer should remember their victims. Elijah stepped forward, his movements careful, non-threatening. He's suffered. Surely that's enough. Suffering is not justice, it is merely consequence. Then what would be justice? Elijah's voice carried genuine curiosity beneath the tension. death? After showing him this, after breaking him with the weight of his own crimes, would you simply kill him? Ghost Rider's flames flickered. Deep inside, Johnny Blaze stirred again. The question echoed in the space between them. What was justice? And he'd spent so long hunting, punishing, executing the spirit of vengeance's judgment. But this vampire, this hybrid, was already destroyed. The Penance stare had shattered whatever Klaus Mikaelson had been. He plans to kill the doppelganger, Ghost Rider said. An innocent. Elena, Klaus whispered, his voice broken. The ritual, I have to break, to be free. Freedom built on innocent blood is damnation. Rebecca's eyes flashed with her own vampire nature, protective fury overriding her fear. You don't understand. We've been running for 1,000 years. Our father, Mikael, hunts us, wants to kill Klaus for being an abomination. The hybrid curse keeps Nick weak, vulnerable. The ritual is the only way. There is always another way. Not for us. Elijah's voice was quiet, but firm. We are monsters by nature. We accept this, but we are also family, always and forever. That bond is the only thing that makes our existence bearable. Klaus breaking his curse means our family stops running, means we might finally have peace. Ghost Rider turned his burning gaze on Elijah. Peace built on murder is no peace at all. Then what would you have us do? Elijah spread his hands. We are vampires. We kill to survive. Even those who drink animal blood, like young Stefan Salvatore, have killed. We are damned by our very nature. Should we all simply lie down and let the sun claim us? Would that be justice in your eyes? The question hung in the air. Johnny Blaze, buried deep within the spirit of vengeance, wrestled with it. He'd been asking himself the same thing since arriving in this dimension. These weren't demons or unrepentant sinners. They were complicated, and monsters who loved. Killers who sought redemption, immortals trying to find meaning in endless existence. Before Ghost Rider could answer, the windows exploded inward. Magic, raw and powerful, flooded the room like a tsunami. Bonnie Bennett stood in the gap, flanked by Stefan and Damon Salvatore. The witch's hands glowed with green-gold energy, and behind her, the very air shimmered with ancestral power. "Step away from them," Bonnie commanded, her voice carrying the weight of generations. Ghost Rider's head tilted, considering. The Bennett witch. You defended the Salvatores. Now you defend Klaus Mikaelson, the hybrid who plans to murder your friend. I'm not defending Klaus. Bonnie's eyes were hard. I'm defending the balance. You've already broken Klaus's mind. I can feel the fracture from here. If you destroy him completely, it'll create a power vacuum. Every vampire he's sired will go insane. Every hybrid he plans to create, the magical framework is tied to his existence. You kill him, you unravel 1,000 years of supernatural connections. Stefan moved forward carefully, his hands visible and non-threatening. She's right. Klaus is a linchpin. We hate him, we fear him, but the supernatural world is built on certain structures. Remove him wrong, and everything collapses. Damon, predictably, was more direct. Plus, much as I'd love to see Klaus get what he deserves, if you break every original with that Penance stare party trick, Mikael shows up with no one to stop him, and he makes Klaus look like a cuddly puppy. Trust me on this. Ghost Rider regarded Klaus, still trembling on the floor, barely conscious. The hybrid was muttering in Old Norse. Apologies, please, fragments of prayers to gods that no longer answered. The Penance stare had done its work. Klaus Mikaelson would never be the same. But was that enough? He will still perform the ritual, Ghost Rider said. Still kill the innocent girl. Maybe not. Everyone turned to look at Stefan. The younger Salvatore's expression was thoughtful. What if there's another way to break the curse? Klaus is compromised now, vulnerable. This might be our chance to negotiate. to find a solution that doesn't require Elena's death. Klaus's head lifted slightly, his eyes focusing with difficulty on Stefan. There is no other way. The spell requires doppelganger blood, must be willing, or the ritual fails. Then we make you willing to find another way, Bonnie said. Or we bind you until we do. Rebecca snarled at her. You'd bind an original. The magical backlash would kill you. Maybe. But I'd die knowing I protected my friend. Bonnie's magic intensified, candles throughout the house igniting spontaneously. And I've got a lot of very angry ancestors backing me up right now. Elijah raised his hands in a placating gesture. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. This entity, he gestured at Ghost Rider, has made its point rather emphatically. Niklaus is in no condition to perform any ritual. We have 2 days. Might I suggest we use that time to explore alternatives rather than continuing this violence? Ghost Rider's flames crackled, considering. The spirit of vengeance demanded absolute judgment, but Johnny Blaze, the human soul still trapped within, recognized wisdom in the vampire's words. But he'd broken Klaus. The hybrid was suffering the consequences of his sins. Killing him now would be execution, not justice. And there was still the matter of Elena Gilbert, the innocent caught in the middle of supernatural politics. 2 days, Ghost Rider said. Find another way to break the curse, or I will ensure Klaus Mikaelson never harms another innocent. And how exactly do you plan to enforce that? Damon asked. Gonna camp out here? Follow Klaus around? Bit hard to be inconspicuous when you're a flaming skeleton on a motorcycle. Ghost Rider's eye sockets burned brighter. I will know if he moves against the girl. The spirit of vengeance sees sin before it's committed when the intent is strong enough. Try to perform the ritual, and I will arrive before the first drop of blood is spilled. Klaus laughed, a broken, bitter sound. Don't worry. Can't even think about it. Every time I close my eyes, I see them all, every face. Can't do it again. Rebecca pulled her brother closer, shooting Ghost Rider a look of pure hatred. You've destroyed him. 1,000 years of survival, and you broke him in minutes. Are you satisfied? Satisfaction is not my purpose. Justice is. Justice. Elijah tasted the word. I wonder, spirit of vengeance, if you've ever considered that justice and vengeance might not always be the same thing. The words hit something deep in the burning skull. Johnny Blaze surged forward, fighting the spirit's control for just a moment. I know the difference. The voice was still layered with echoes, but something almost human colored it. Doesn't mean the guilty don't deserve to suffer. Stefan's eyes narrowed. There's someone in there, under the demon, someone human. Ghost Rider's flames flared intensely, driving Johnny back down. What I am is justice. What I was is irrelevant. Bonnie's magic flickered, uncertainty crossing her features. The ancestors are saying. They're saying you're bonded, possessed, a human soul and a spirit of vengeance, merged but separate. That's why you're creating an imbalance. You're not purely supernatural. You're a hybrid of your own kind. Enough. Ghost Rider backed toward the hole he'd made in the wall. 2 days. Find another way, or face judgment. He mounted his motorcycle in one smooth motion. The engine roared to life with that distinctive sound of damned souls screaming. Hellfire erupted around the wheels. Wait, Stefan called out. Where will you go? What will you do? Ghost Rider's skull turned back toward them, flames dancing in empty sockets. I will ride, I will watch, and I will wait to see if monsters can truly choose to be better than their nature. The motorcycle launched through the broken wall, flames trailing behind it like a comet's tail. Within seconds, he was gone, leaving only scorch marks and the lingering scent of brimstone. The silence that followed was heavy. Klaus remained on the floor, Rebecca cradling him, his eyes distant and haunted. Elijah stood perfectly still, processing everything that had just occurred. The Salvatores and Bonnie remained in the shattered window frame, none of them quite sure what had just happened. Finally, Damon spoke. "Well, that was new." Stefan shot him a look. "Klaus is broken, really broken. I've never seen anything like that." The Penance stare. Bonnie's voice was quiet. "It's not just showing them what they did. It's making them feel it, all of it. Every victim's pain, every moment of suffering they caused. For someone like Klaus, with 1,000 years of victims." She trailed off. Elijah knelt beside his siblings. "Niklaus? Brother, can you hear me?" Klaus's eyes focused on him with difficulty. "Elijah, I remember all of them, every single one. Their names, their faces. The art teacher in Florence, the girl in Prague, the child in Mexico City who reminded me of Henrik." His voice broke. "I killed a boy who looked like our dead brother because I was angry about something I can't even remember now." "Nick," Rebecca's voice was uncharacteristically gentle, "I'm a monster." Klaus's words were simple, factual. Not because of what I am, because of what I've chosen to do. 1,000 years of choices, and almost all of them were wrong. Damon shifted uncomfortably. I don't know what to do with remorseful Klaus. It's unsettling. I preferred him murderous and megalomaniacal." "Damon," Stefan warned. "What?" "I'm just saying, if Flaming Skull Guy can make Klaus Mikaelson have an existential crisis, what's he going to do to the rest of us?" Bonnie was already shaking her head. "We need to figure out how to send him back. My ancestors are clear. Having two hell dimensions touching the same reality is catastrophic. The longer he stays, the thinner the barriers become. Eventually, both hells could bleed through into our world." Stefan absorbed this. "So we need to find a way to break Klaus's curse without killing Elena. To stop Ghost Rider from destroying every vampires in Mystic Falls and send him back to his own dimension before reality collapses." Perfect. Just another Tuesday in our town. Elijah stood, his composure reasserting itself despite the chaos. 2 days. The Spirit gave us 2 days. I suggest we use them wisely. He looked down at Klaus. "And first, we need to address the fact that my brother is in no condition to do anything, let alone perform a ritual." Klaus's hand shot out, gripping Elijah's wrist with surprising strength. "The doppelganger. Elena. Promise me. Promise me we won't kill her. I can't add another innocent to the count. I can see the count, Elijah. I see them all standing behind my eyes, waiting, watching, judging. I can't. I promise, Niklaus." Elijah's voice was solemn. "On our family's oath, as always and forever, we will find another way." Rebecca looked up at her older brother, tears in her own eyes. "How?" "The spell is absolute. It requires the doppelganger's death. Then we find a loophole." Elijah's jaw set with determination. "We have 2 days, and we are 1,000 years old. Surely we can outthink one ritual." Stefan and Bonnie exchanged a glance. An unspoken agreement passed between them. "We'll help," Stefan said. "Not for Klaus, for Elena. But if we're going to work together, we need to be clear, this doesn't make us allies. It makes us people with a common goal." "Understood." Elijah inclined his head. "Miss Bennett, your magical expertise will be invaluable. Stefan, your knowledge of supernatural lore and your unique relationship with my brother may provide insights. And Damon will be the handsome voice of cynicism and inappropriate humor. I know my role." Damon's smirk was back, but his eyes were serious. "But let's be clear, Ghost Rider is still out there, and he promised to show up if Klaus so much as thinks about the ritual. We're on a very short leash here." Outside, somewhere in the Virginia darkness, a flaming skull rode through the night. Ghost Rider could feel them, all the guilty souls scattered across Mystic Falls like stars in the sky. The originals with their millennium of sin, the Salvatores with their centuries of blood, the younger vampires still learning the cost of immortality, and Elena Gilbert, the innocent caught in the center of it all. Johnny Blaze wrestled with the spirit of vengeance for control. They're trying to find another way. Maybe monsters can change, as they cannot erase what they've done, the spirit insisted. Justice demands payment. Justice demands balance. Maybe showing them what they are is enough. Maybe redemption is possible. Redemption is earned through suffering and sacrifice. We shall see if they are capable of either. The motorcycle roared through the night, flames lighting the darkness, a judge without mercy riding through a town full of sinners trying desperately to be something more than their nature. 2 days until the ritual. 2 days to prove that monsters could choose humanity over hunger. 2 days before Ghost Rider would render his final judgment. The Bennett house smelled of sage and old magic. Bonnie lit the last candle in the circle she'd drawn on her bedroom floor, the symbols around its perimeter glowing faintly with ancestral power. She'd been working for 3 hours, ever since returning from the confrontation at the Lockwood estate, trying to understand exactly what Ghost Rider was and how to send him back to his own dimension. The grimoires stacked around her represented 4 generations of Bennett witches. Her Graham's practical spell work, her great-grandmother's theoretical research, Emily Bennett's careful documentation of 1860s supernatural phenomena, and Ayana's ancient texts from the original family's transformation. None of them had anything about flaming skeleton demons from hell dimensions. She was exhausted, and the binding spell she'd used on Ghost Rider had drained her more than she'd let on, and every Bennett witch from here to the other side was screaming warnings through her ancestral connection. The message was clear. He doesn't belong. He's breaking everything. Fix it. Easier said than done, Bonnie muttered, flipping through another grimoire. A knock at her window made her jump. Caroline's face appeared, vampire features allowing her to cling to the second-story wall like Spider-Man. "Can I come in?" Bonnie waved her in. Caroline slipped through the window with supernatural grace, landing silently on the bedroom floor. She looked rattled, which was saying something for a vampire who'd faced Klaus Mikaelson's wrath and lived. "I saw what that thing did to Klaus," Caroline said without preamble. "Bonnie, I've never seen him like that. He was broken, completely shattered. And if he could do that to an original vampire, he could do it to anyone." Bonnie sat back from her circle. "That's what scares me. The Penance stare doesn't care how old you are or how powerful. It just makes you feel everything you've ever done wrong, all at once." Caroline hugged herself, her vampire nature making the gesture unnecessary, for warmth but psychologically comforting nonetheless. "Do you think he'll use it on Stefan? Or Damon?" "He already did. At the boarding house. Damon especially. I've never heard him scream like that. And Stefan." Bonnie remembered the way Ghost Rider had held Stefan by the throat, the flames dancing between them. "Stefan's different. He's actively trying to atone. Ghost Rider seemed to, I don't know, recognize that. He still judged him, but he didn't destroy him the way he did Klaus." Caroline paced the room with vampire speed, 3 steps taking her wall to wall in a blur. "This is insane. We've dealt with original vampires, werewolf curses, doppelganger blood magic, and now we have a literal demon from another hell dimension riding around town on a flaming motorcycle judging people. How is this our life? Because we live in Mystic Falls, where the supernatural convergence is apparently a beacon for every cosmic horror in existence." Bonnie rubbed her temples. "The ancestors are furious, Care. They keep showing me visions of what happens if Ghost Rider stays too long. The barriers between dimensions start to collapse. Both hells bleed through. Demons, tortured souls, and all of it spilling into our reality. Can you send him back? I don't know how he got here in the first place. The ancestors showed me fragments, some kind of expression magic gone wrong, a dimensional rift, but whoever cast that spell is dead, burned to ash by hellfire, without knowing the exact parameters of what brought him through. Bonnie gestured helplessly at her grimoires. I'm working blind. Caroline stopped pacing. What about the person inside? Stefan said there was someone human in there. If we can reach him, talk to him. Maybe he'll go back willingly. Maybe. Bonnie wasn't convinced. But the spirit of vengeance is in control. The human, Johnny Blaze, I think his name is. Based on what the ancestors whispered, he's buried pretty deep. And even if we could reach him, why would he leave? There are more guilty people in Mystic Falls than anywhere else on Earth. To him, this is target-rich environment. A third voice spoke from the doorway. Then maybe we don't try to send him away. Both girls jumped. Elena stood there, arms crossed, her expression determined in that particular way that usually preceded terrible decisions. Elena, when did you get here? Caroline demanded. About 5 minutes ago. Your mom let me in, Bonnie. I heard voices and came up. Elena entered the room fully, closing the door behind her. I'm serious. What if we don't try to send Ghost Rider back? What if we use him? Bonnie and Caroline exchanged concerned glances. Elena, Bonnie started. No, think about it. Klaus is broken right now. The ritual is in 2 days. Ghost Rider promised he'd stop Klaus if he tried to go through with it. Suan and we've been trying to find a way to save me without finding a way to stop Klaus permanently. This might be our chance. To do what? Caroline's voice was sharp. Let the demon destroy Klaus completely. Bonnie just said that would cause a supernatural cascade. Every vampire Klaus sired would go insane. Not destroy. Control. Elena's eyes were bright with the kind of desperation that came from being hunted by an original vampire for months. Ghost Rider judges the guilty, right? He punishes them. Klaus is guilty of 1,000 years of murder. Use that. Keep Klaus so broken he can't hurt anyone ever again. Bonnie stood up, her expression horrified. Elena, that's torture. Eternal psychological torture. The Penance stare doesn't just show you your sins. It makes you live them over and over. Keeping Klaus in that state would be worse than death. Good. Elena's voice was cold. Do you know what Klaus has done? Not just historically, but to us. He killed Jenna. She's going to die in 2 days, Bonnie. My aunt, who raised me, who's been there for Jeremy and me since our parents died. He's going to kill her as part of his ritual. And you want me to feel bad about him suffering? Caroline moved to Elena's side. Lena, I get it. I hate Klaus too. But this isn't you. You don't advocate for torture. Maybe I'm tired of being the moral compass while everyone around me dies. Elena's eyes were wet, but her voice stayed steady. My parents, Jenna. How many people in this town have died because of supernatural politics? And now I'm supposed to what? Sacrifice myself for a ritual that breaks a curse on a mass murderer? Want to find some magical loophole that probably doesn't exist? At least this way, Klaus is neutralized. Bonnie approached her friend carefully. Even if we could do what you're suggesting, and I'm not saying we should, Ghost Rider isn't under our control. He's a force of nature. We can't just aim him at Klaus and expect him to stay there. Why not? He's already hunting Klaus. We saw what he did at the Lockwood estate. All we'd have to do is encourage him, point him in the right direction. And how exactly do you plan to communicate with a demon made of hellfire and judgment? Caroline's sarcasm was sharp. Hey, Mr. Ghost Rider, sir, would you mind keeping Klaus Mikaelson in eternal torment for us? Thanks. Appreciate it. Before Elena could respond, the temperature in the room dropped again. The candles in Bonnie's circle flickered wildly. And then outside the window, a familiar orange glow appeared. Ghost Rider sat astride his motorcycle in the Bennett driveway, engine idling, flames casting dancing shadows across the house. He wasn't moving, wasn't attacking, just waiting. Is he watching us? Caroline whispered. Bonnie's ancestral senses flared. He knows we're talking about him. Probably heard everything through the window. Elena walked to the window, standing directly in Ghost Rider's line of sight. For a long moment, girl and demon regarded each other through the glass. Then Elena opened the window. "You wanted Klaus to face justice," she called out. "I want Klaus to never hurt anyone again." Seems like we want the same thing. Ghost Rider's engine revved once, a sound like tortured souls acknowledging her words. Then that layered voice. The doppelganger, Elena Gilbert. "Or do you seek vengeance disguised as justice?" "I seek survival, and the survival of everyone I love. If that requires vengeance, then fine. I'm okay with that." Caroline grabbed Elena's arm. "Elena, don't. Your aunt will die in the ritual," Ghost Rider continued. "Jenna Summers, vampire sacrifice. You would use me to prevent this. Wouldn't you want to prevent it? She's innocent. Isn't that what you do? Protect the innocent, punish the guilty?" The flames around Ghost Rider's skull intensified. Deep inside, Johnny Blaze wrestled with the spirit of vengeance. The girl was right. Jenna Summers was innocent, would die for a curse that had nothing to do with her. Protecting her was exactly what they should do, but using the Penance stare as a weapon, as a tool of control rather than judgment. "I'm not your weapon," Ghost Rider said. "I judge, and I do not serve." "I'm not asking you to serve. I'm asking you to do what you already want to do. Stop Klaus from killing more innocent people." Bonnie pushed past Elena to the window. "Ghost Rider, listen to me. I'm a Bennett witch. I can sense the dimensional instability you're causing. Every moment you stay in this reality, both hell dimensions come closer to merging. If that happens, everything, our world, your world, all of it, collapses into chaos." Ghost Rider's burning gaze shifted to her. "I'm aware, witch. Your ancestors have been screaming warnings since I arrived. Then you know you can't stay here. You have to go back to your own dimension. When my work is done." "And when is that?" Bonnie's voice rose with frustration. "When you've judged every vampire in Mystic Falls, every supernatural being, there are hundreds of them, and you could spend years here, and by then, reality itself will have fractured." A new voice joined the conversation. Stefan and Damon had appeared in the driveway below, moving with vampire speed. Stefan looked up at the window, then at Ghost Rider. "There might be a middle ground," Stefan called up. "Ghost Rider, you gave Klaus 2 days to find another way to break his curse. What if we find it? What if we can save Elena without Klaus killing anyone?" Ghost Rider's skull turned to regard the Salvatores. "And if no alternative exists?" "Then you do what you came here to do," Damon said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "You stop Klaus, permanently, but give us the 2 days you promised." "Let us try." 2 days during which Klaus Mikaelson suffers the weight of his sins, Ghost Rider said. 2 days during which every vampire in this town knows they are being watched. Judged. We can live with that, Stefan said. Can you? The question hung in the night air. Ghost Rider's flames crackled, casting orange light across the Bennett house, the Salvatore brothers, and the 3 girls in the window. Somewhere in the distance, a clock tower chimed midnight. 2 days had become 1 day and 23 hours. Finally, Ghost Rider spoke. The human inside me asks for mercy, for redemption, for the possibility that monsters can change. The voice shifted, became slightly more human. I was a stunt rider, Johnny Blaze, made a deal with a demon, became this. I know what it's like to be damned, to want to be better than your curse. Elena's expression softened slightly. Then you understand. We're all cursed in different ways. Klaus by his hybrid nature, Stefan by his bloodlust, Damon by his damonness. But we're trying. We're all trying to be better. The spirit of vengeance reasserted control, the voice becoming layered and otherworldly again. Trying is not sufficient. Action defines us. Choices define us. In 2 days, Klaus Mikaelson will make a choice, as will all of you. And you'll judge us based on that choice, Bonnie said quietly. I will judge you based on all your choices, past, present, and future. With that, Ghost Rider revved his engine. The motorcycle launched forward, flames trailing behind it as it tore out of the Bennett driveway and disappeared into the Mystic Falls night. Within seconds, even the orange glow was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of brimstone. Caroline closed the window. That was unsettling. He's watching all of us, Stefan said from below. Not just Klaus, all of us. Elena's hands were shaking, adrenaline and fear catching up to her now that Ghost Rider was gone. Do you think he meant it? About giving us 2 days? Ghost Rider doesn't lie, Bonnie said, the certainty coming from her ancestral connection. The spirit of vengeance is absolute. If he said 2 days, we have 2 days, not a minute more. Damon appeared at the window, having vamped up the side of the house. So here's what we know. Flaming Skull Demon is watching us. Klaus is having the world's worst existential crisis. We have less than 48 hours to find a magical loophole that probably doesn't exist. And if we fail, either Elena dies or reality collapses. Did I miss anything? Jenna still dies even if we find a way to save Elena, Caroline said quietly. The ritual requires a vampire sacrifice. Klaus has already chosen her. The weight of that settled over them. Jenna Summers, Elena's aunt, soon to be a vampire, and then immediately sacrificed in Klaus's ritual. Another innocent caught in supernatural crossfire. Stefan climbed through the window, joining them in Bonnie's room. Then we save them both, Jenna and Elena. We find a way to break the curse without any deaths. That's impossible, Bonnie said. The ritual is blood magic. It requires specific sacrifices. A vampire, a werewolf, and a doppelganger. The spell is absolute. Magic always has loopholes, Damon countered. We just need to find one, and we've got the world's oldest vampires, the most powerful witch in Mystic Falls, and Stefan's annoying optimism. If anyone can find a way, it's us. Elena looked at each of them. Her friends, her protectors, the supernatural family she'd built in this impossible town. And if we can't, no one had an answer for that. Because if they couldn't find another way, Elena would have to choose. Sacrifice herself for Klaus's curse, or let Ghost Rider destroy Klaus and trigger a supernatural cascade that could kill hundreds. Some choices had no right answer. We should split up, Stefan said, breaking the silence. Cover more ground. Bonnie, keep researching dimensional magic and ways to send Ghost Rider back. Caroline, you work with Elijah and Rebecca. They're 1,000 years old. They might know loopholes in the original curse. Damon and I will talk to the witches in the old cemetery. I see if any of them have insights. And me? Elena asked. You stay here. Stay safe. Ghost Rider called you innocent. Let's keep it that way. Stefan's voice was gentle but firm. I'm not helpless, Stefan. No one said you were. But you're also the target of a hybrid ritual and being used as a moral barometer by a demon from hell. Let us handle the supernatural politics while you stay alive. Please. Elena wanted to argue. Bonnie could see it in her eyes. But finally, she nodded. Fine. But I want updates every hour. Deal. Stefan moved toward the window, preparing to jump down. Damon lingered, his gaze on Bonnie. The thing you said about reality collapsing. How long do we actually have before that becomes a problem? Bonnie consulted her ancestral connection, reaching out to the Bennett witches who'd passed. Yeah, the answer made her blood run cold. 3 days, maybe 4. After that, the dimensional barriers break down completely. Both hells merge with our reality. So even if we solve the Klaus problem, we still need to send Ghost Rider back to his own dimension in less than a week. Exactly. Damon's smirk was sharp and humorless. Just once, I'd like a supernatural crisis that didn't come with a doomsday clock. Is that too much to ask? Apparently, Caroline muttered. Stefan had already dropped to the ground below. Damon followed, and Caroline prepared to as well. But Bonnie caught her arm. Wait, there's something else. Once the Salvatoris were gone, Bonnie pulled Caroline and Elena close. The ancestors showed me something. About Ghost Rider. About what happens if we can't send him back. What? Elena's voice was quiet. The spirit of vengeance will find a new host. Someone here, in our dimension. Someone guilty enough to bond with, but strong enough to contain it. Caroline's eyes widened. You mean it would possess someone? Someone we know? Most likely. The spirit needs a host to exist in physical reality. Right now, it has Johnny Blaze from the other dimension, but if Johnny dies, or if the dimensional barriers force them apart, the spirit will seek the nearest compatible host. Who would that be? Elena asked. Bonnie's expression was grim. Stefan. Maybe Damon. Possibly even Klaus if his mind wasn't already shattered. Anyone with enough guilt to fuel the spirit's need for vengeance, but enough strength to survive the bonding. The implications hit them like a physical blow. Ghost Rider wasn't just a temporary threat, as he was a potential permanent addition to their reality, and one of their friends might become his next vessel. We have to tell them, Caroline said. No. Bonnie's voice was firm. Not yet. They've got enough to worry about with the ritual and Klaus. If they know one of them might become the next Ghost Rider, they'll make stupid heroic decisions to protect each other. Bonnie, they deserve to know. After we solve the Klaus problem, 2 days, remember? Let's focus on one apocalypse at a time. Elena and Caroline exchanged glances but nodded. Bonnie was right. Adding another layer of dread to an already impossible situation wouldn't help anyone. Outside, somewhere in the darkness of Mystic Falls, Ghost Rider rode through streets that had seen centuries of supernatural violence. He could feel them all, the vampires, hunting, on the werewolves, transforming with the approaching full moon, the witches casting spells, the humans oblivious to the monsters living among them. And in 2 days, he would judge them all. Johnny Blaze fought for control, wrestling with the spirit of vengeance for just a moment of autonomy. They're trying. These people, monsters, yes, but also friends, family, people who love each other. Maybe they deserve a chance. Love does not absolve sin, the spirit responded. It merely complicates judgment. Then maybe judgment needs to be complicated. Maybe absolute justice isn't always right. There is no right or wrong, only guilty and innocent, only justice and vengeance. And what are we? Justice or vengeance? The spirit of vengeance had no answer for that. So Ghost Rider rode on through the night, a burning question without an answer, and hunting through a town where the line between monster and human had long since blurred into something unrecognizable. 46 hours until the ritual. 46 hours to find another way. 46 hours before Ghost Rider would render final judgment on Klaus Mikaelson, the Salvatore brothers, and everyone caught in the supernatural crossfire. The clock was ticking, and in Mystic Falls, Virginia, time had never been on anyone's side. The crypt beneath Mystic Falls' oldest cemetery smelled of earth and old death. Elijah Mikaelson descended the stone steps with practiced grace, his suit somehow remaining immaculate despite the dust and cobwebs. Behind him, Rebecca followed with less patience, her heels clicking sharply against stone worn smooth by centuries of use. And between them, supported by both siblings, Klaus stumbled like a broken marionette. The original hybrid hadn't spoken coherently in hours. Ever since Ghost Rider's Penance stare, Klaus had been trapped in a waking nightmare, his eyes seeing not the present, but an endless parade of victims, his voice whispering apologies in dead languages, his mind fracturing under the weight of a millennium's worth of accumulated guilt. "Careful," Elijah murmured as Klaus nearly fell on the stairs. We're almost there." "Why are we here?" Rebecca demanded. "Nick needs rest, not more dark magic. Nicholas needs answers, and the only witch powerful enough to provide them has been dead for 500 years. At the bottom of the stairs, a circular chamber opened up, its walls covered in symbols that predated even the Mikaelsons. In the center, a stone altar stood surrounded by candles that burst into flame as Elijah entered. Magic recognizing an original vampire's presence. Elijah laid Klaus on the altar. The hybrid's eyes were open but unfocused, blood tears still streaming down his face. "I see them, Elijah. All of them. The girl in Prague who loved flowers. I killed her in her garden. I can smell the roses. I can taste her blood. It won't stop. It won't ever stop. It will, brother. I promise you." Elijah's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his concern. He'd seen Klaus survive being staked, burned, hunted by their father across continents. But he'd never seen him like this, completely psychologically shattered. Rebecca touched Klaus's forehead gently. "What's the plan, Elijah?" "We need to speak with Ayana. She's the one who performed the original spell that turned us. If anyone knows a loophole in the hybrid curse, it would be her. Ayana's been dead since 1002, and she's not exactly on speaking terms with our family after what we became, which is why we need Miss Bennett's help." Elijah pulled out his phone, a strange anachronism for a 1,000-year-old vampire, but he'd always adapted well to modern convenience. He dialed. Stefan answered on the second ring. "Elijah, Mr. Salvatore, I need to speak with Bonnie Bennett. It's urgent." A pause, rustling, then Bonnie's voice, wary. "What do you want?" "Klaus is deteriorating. The Penance stare has broken something fundamental in his psyche. If we don't find a solution soon, I fear his mind may not recover." "Why should I care if Klaus recovers?" Bonnie's voice was cold. "He's a monster. Maybe this is exactly what he deserves." "Perhaps. But a broken Klaus is still an original vampire with a millennium of power and a fractured mind. If his consciousness completely fragments, his body will continue operating on pure instinct and rage. Every vampire he's sired will feel the psychic feedback. It will be a massacre. Silence on the other end. Then, what do you need from me?" "Access to the other side, specifically to my family's witch, Ayana. She's the only one who might know how to break the hybrid curse without the doppelganger sacrifice. The other side is collapsing. Using it is dangerous. More dangerous than Klaus losing his mind completely. More dangerous than Ghost Rider judging every supernatural being in Mystic Falls. We have less than 2 days, Miss Bennett. I'm not asking you to like my brother or forgive him. I'm asking you to help us find a solution that saves everyone." Another pause. Bonnie was consulting someone. Stefan, probably, or Elena. Finally, "Fine, but I'm not doing this alone. Stefan and Damon are coming with me. And if this is a trick, no tricks. We share a common goal: saving Elena Gilbert and preventing supernatural catastrophe. For now, that makes us allies of necessity. We'll be there in 20 minutes. Elijah hung up and looked at his siblings. Klaus had curled into a fetal position on the altar, still muttering in Old Norse. Rebecca sat beside him, stroking his hair the way their mother used to when they were human children 1,000 years ago. "Will it work?" Rebecca asked quietly. "Can Ayana actually help?" "I don't know, but it's the only option we have left." Elijah's aristocratic composure cracked slightly. "I cannot lose him, Rebecca. Not like this. Not to some demon's judgment that strips away everything he is until only the guilt remains. He did terrible things, Elijah. We all did. But Klaus, She looked at their broken brother. He's killed so many, for so little reason. The art teacher who criticized his painting, the girl who rejected him, the villagers that happened to be in his path when he was angry. How does someone recover from seeing all of that at once? I don't know, but we're going to try. Footsteps on the stairs announced the arrival of the Salvatores and Bonnie. Stefan came first, his expression carefully neutral. Damon followed with his usual swagger, though his eyes betrayed unease at entering an original vampire's chosen territory. Bonnie descended last, her hands already glowing with magical energy. She stopped short when she saw Klaus on the altar. Oh my God, is he alive, technically? Elijah gestured to the hybrid. The Penance stare has trapped him in a loop of experiencing his victim's suffering. He hasn't slept, hasn't fed, hasn't done anything but relive 1,000 years of murder for the past 12 hours. Damon whistled low. That's actually really disturbing, and I've seen some disturbing things. Stefan approached the altar cautiously. Klaus's eyes tracked the movement, recognition flickering briefly before drowning again in the sea of guilt. Stefan, I compelled you, made you the Ripper. All those people in the 20s. My fault. My fault. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Klaus, Stefan looked genuinely shaken. I know, it's okay. It's not okay. Nothing is okay. Nothing will ever be okay again. I see them all, Stefan. Every single one. Bonnie moved closer, her magical senses probing Klaus's aura. What she found made her gasp. His mind is completely fragmented. It's like 1,000 different voices all screaming at once. All his victims, all their pain, all compressed into his consciousness. I've never seen anything like this. Can you help him? Elijah asked. I don't know if I should. Bonnie's voice was hard. He killed Jenna. In 2 days, he's going to turn her into a vampire and then murder her for his ritual. Why should I help him recover so he can do that? Because if you don't, Rebecca snapped, he'll lose his mind completely and thousands more will die. Is that what you want, little witch? Bonnie's hands sparked with magic and Rebecca's vampire features flared in response. Stefan stepped between them quickly. Everyone calm down. We're here to find a solution, not start another fight. Stefan's right, Elijah said. Fighting amongst ourselves accomplishes nothing. Miss Bennett, I understand your reluctance. But consider this, a mindless Klaus pursuing the ritual anyway out of pure instinct versus a recovered Klaus who might be convinced there's another way. Which scenario do you prefer? Bonnie absorbed this. Finally, grudgingly, she nodded. Fine, but I'm doing this for Elena and Jenna, not for Klaus. What do you need me to do? Contact Ayana. She's on the other side, has been for 1,000 years. As a Bennett witch, you should be able to reach her, correct? Theoretically, but the other side is unstable right now because of Ghost Rider. Opening a connection could be dangerous. Everything about this situation is dangerous, Damon observed. Might as well commit. Bonnie shot him a look but began preparing the spell. She moved around the chamber, adjusting candles, drawing symbols on the stone floor with chalk pulled from her bag. Most of the originals watched with interest. This was Bennett magic, the line that had served and opposed them for centuries. I'll need a focus, Bonnie said. Something that connects to Ayana directly. Elijah produced a small leather pouch from his jacket. Inside was a carved wooden pendant, ancient and worn. This was Ayana's. She gave it to my mother Esther before the transformation. It's been in our family for a millennium. Bonnie took it carefully, feeling the magical resonance. Generations of power had touched this object. She placed it in the center of her chalk circle and knelt beside it. Everyone needs to be quiet. This spell requires absolute concentration. Stefan and Damon stepped back. Rebecca stayed close to Klaus, one hand on his shoulder. Elijah stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind his back in that formal way he had. Bonnie began to chant. Latin first, then older languages, the tongue of the Salem witches, the dialect of the African tribes from which the Bennett line had originated. The candles around the chamber flared brighter. The air grew thick with power, and slowly, impossibly, a figure began to materialize above the altar. Ayana appeared as she had in life, regal, powerful, dark skin unmarred by age despite her centuries of wisdom. But she was translucent, ghostly, pulled from the other side by Bonnie's spell. Her eyes found the Mikaelsons immediately. Elijah, Rebecca. Her voice echoed strangely, layered with the sound of distant wind. And Niklaus, though I barely recognize him in this state. Elijah bowed his head respectfully. Ayana, thank you for answering our call. I didn't answer for you. I answered for the Bennett child who risks herself to contact me. Ayana's gaze fixed on Bonnie. You are powerful, young one, but foolish to invite the attention of the dead while the barriers between worlds are so fragile. I know the risks, Bonnie said, but we need your help. The hybrid curse, is there a way to break it without killing the doppelganger? Ayana's expression was unreadable. You asked me to undo what Esther created, the spell that bound Niklaus's werewolf nature to protect him from his father's wrath? To save an innocent girl's life, Stefan interjected. Elena Gilbert doesn't deserve to die for a curse she had nothing to do with. The doppelganger line has always been cursed by the shadow of supernatural attention. Tatia, Catherine, now Elena. That is the price of being Petrova blood. Ayana's eyes swept across them all. But you speak of an entity from another hell, a spirit of vengeance that judges without mercy. I have felt its presence even from the other side. It is disrupting everything. Then you understand why we're desperate, Elijah said. The spirit has given us 2 days to find an alternative. If we cannot, it will destroy Klaus and trigger a cascade we cannot control. Ayana looked at Klaus, still writhing on the altar, trapped in his own guilt. What has been done to him? The Penance stare, Bonnie explained. The spirit of vengeance forced Klaus to experience all the pain he's ever caused. 1,000 years of murder, all at once. For the first time, something like sympathy crossed Ayana's ghostly features. That is a punishment I would not wish on anyone, and even Niklaus, for all his crimes. She moved closer to him, her translucent hand hovering over his forehead. His mind is shattered. The guilt has fragmented his consciousness into thousands of pieces, each one reliving a different victim's death. Can you heal him? Rebecca's voice was desperate. Heal? No, but I can perhaps organize the chaos. Give him enough coherence to function, though the memories will not fade. The guilt will remain. That's more than we have now, Elijah said. Please, Ayana. He may not deserve your mercy, but it's not about what he deserves. Ayana's hand touched Klaus's forehead, and the hybrid gasped as her magic flowed through him. It's about preventing greater catastrophe. A mindless original is a danger to everyone. Light poured from Ayana's hand into Klaus's skull. The hybrid convulsed, his back arching, blood tears flowing faster, but slowly his eyes began to focus. The fragmented muttering became coherent words. He was still suffering, still trapped in the memories, but there was structure to it now. Order instead of chaos. After several long minutes, Ayana withdrew her hand. Klaus collapsed back onto the altar, breathing heavily, unnecessary for a vampire, but trauma made old habits surface. Ayana, Klaus whispered, his voice hoarse. I see them all still, but I can think around them now. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. You will carry those memories forever, Niklaus. The Penance stare has shown you truth you can never unsee. Every victim will haunt you until you find true atonement or until you embrace being the monster they showed you. I don't want to be that monster anymore. Klaus's voice broke. Listen, I can't. Not after seeing. I thought I knew what I'd done. I kept count, names, dates, places, but I didn't understand. I didn't feel it until now. Rebecca squeezed his hand. We'll help you, Nick. Always and forever, remember? Ayana turned to Bonnie. Now, to your question, the hybrid curse can be broken without the doppelganger's death, but the price is considerable. Everyone leaned forward. Stefan spoke first. What price? The spell Esther created bound Niklaus's werewolf nature, using the blood of the doppelganger Tatia, whom both Elijah and Klaus loved. It was blood magic, fueled by love and sacrifice. To break it requires the same components: blood, love, and willing sacrifice. Elena's blood, Bonnie said, but without killing her. The doppelganger's blood must be freely given, not taken, and that it must be mixed with the blood of someone Klaus loves, someone who chooses to sacrifice themselves in the doppelganger's place. Elijah's expression hardened. Another death. That solves nothing. Not necessarily death. Sacrifice takes many forms. It could be a life, yes. But it could also be power, immortality, freedom, whatever is most precious to the one who sacrifices. Klaus pushed himself up on the altar, still shaking but coherent. Who would sacrifice for me? After everything I've done, after what that demon showed me I truly am. Rebecca and Elijah exchanged glances. We would, Rebecca said simply, always and forever. No, Klaus's voice was firm despite his weakness. I won't let you throw away your lives or immortality for my curse. Not after seeing what I've done with mine. Then who? Stefan asked. Ayana, you said someone Klaus loves. Does it have to be family? Ayana's ghostly form flickered, the other side pulling at her, unstable from Ghost Rider's dimensional presence. It must be someone he loves. Blood relation is not required, but genuine love is. Without that emotional component, the magic fails. Damon snorted. Well, that narrows it down. Klaus doesn't exactly have a lot of people in his loves me column. He's got his siblings and actually that might be it. Klaus's eyes were distant, thinking. There was Caroline Forbes, the vampire. I felt something for her, but I don't know if it's love or merely fascination. Caroline would never sacrifice for you, Bonnie said flatly. Not after how you've treated her. I know, I'm simply answering the question. Klaus looked at Ayana. This willing sacrifice, must they know they're sacrificing for the ritual? Or can it be someone who gives up something for me unknowingly? Ayana's expression was shrewd. An interesting question. The magic cares about the act, not the awareness. If someone were to sacrifice something precious for you without knowing it would break the curse, the spell might still work. But finding such a sacrifice in 2 days is impossible, Elijah finished. Which brings us back to the original problem. Not impossible. Klaus swung his legs off the altar, standing on shaky legs. Difficult, but not impossible. If I could convince someone to choose sacrifice willingly, someone I genuinely love. Who? Rebecca demanded. You just established the list is basically us, and we're not allowed to sacrifice, apparently. Before Klaus could answer, the temperature in the crypt plummeted, candles extinguished, and that familiar orange glow appeared at the top of the stairs. Ghost Rider descended into the crypt, each footstep leaving scorch marks on the ancient stone. His presence filled the chamber like an oppressive weight. Ayana's ghostly form flickered more violently, the other side and Ghost Rider's hell dimension creating interference. You summon the dead, Ghost Rider's voice echoed, in a place of burial, seeking loopholes to escape judgment. Elijah stepped forward, placing himself between Ghost Rider and Klaus. We seek alternatives, not escapes. There is a difference. Is there? Ghost Rider's burning gaze swept across them all. I see the Bennett Witch using forbidden magic while the barriers between worlds collapse. I see the originals plotting ways to continue their existence. I see the Salvatores complicit in helping murderers escape consequences. Stefan's jaw tightened. We're trying to save an innocent life. At what cost? The proper balance of nature, the stability of reality itself? Ayana's voice cut through the tension. Spirit of vengeance, I know what you are. I have seen your kind before, in visions and warnings passed down through Bennett ancestors. You do not belong in this world. Ghost Rider turned his attention to her. You are already dead, witch. Your judgment has been rendered. By whom? You. I have faced the consequences of my choices and earned my place in the afterlife. You have no authority over me. I have authority over all the guilty. Then you have authority over everyone, Ayana said sharply. For we are all guilty of something. That is the nature of existence. The question is whether guilt defines us or whether we grow beyond it. Ghost Rider was silent for a long moment. Then Johnny Blaze's voice emerged, more human. She's right, we're all guilty. The question is, do we let it destroy us? Klaus looked up at the flaming skull, blood tears still wet on his face. You showed me what I am, what I've done. I can never unsee it, never unfeel it. Is that not punishment enough? Punishment is not the same as atonement. Then what would atonement look like? How do I atone for 1,000 years of murder? Ghost Rider's flames burned brighter, then dimmer, as if the spirit and Johnny were wrestling for control. Finally, you can't, not fully, but you can choose. Differently. Going forward, you can choose, to be better. The words hung in the air. Everyone stared at Ghost Rider, shocked that the entity of absolute judgment was suggesting redemption might be possible. Bonnie found her voice first. You'd let Klaus go. Just like that. Not just like that. If he breaks the curse without killing the innocent, if he chooses sacrifice over murder, if he proves that monsters can change. Elijah's eyes narrowed. And if he can't, if we can't find a willing sacrifice in time? Ghost Rider's answer was absolute. Then I will ensure he never harms another innocent. Permanently. Klaus pushed himself fully upright, standing on shaking legs. Understood. 2 days. Find someone willing to sacrifice for me. Someone I genuinely love, or face your final judgment. 43 hours remain. Use them wisely. Ghost Rider turned to leave, but Bonnie called out, Wait, Ayana said there might be a way to send you back to your dimension. Would you go, if we found a way? The flaming skull turned back. When my work here is done. Not before. Your work is destroying reality, Bonnie insisted. Every moment you stay, both hell dimensions come closer to merging. In 3 days, maybe less, everything collapses. Ghost Rider's flames crackled. Johnny Blaze's voice emerged. I know, I can feel it. The barriers, thinning. But I can't leave until justice is served. Or vengeance. Not sure which anymore. And with that troubling admission, Ghost Rider ascended the stairs and disappeared into the Virginia night. Ayana's form was flickering rapidly now, the other side pulling her back. I cannot maintain this connection much longer. The barriers are too unstable. Ayana, Klaus called out. The sacrifice. Does it have to be human, or can it be something else? Vampirism itself? Power? But Ayana was already fading. Find what you love most, Niklaus. Offer it freely. That is the only way. Her voice echoed as she vanished. And beware the spirit of vengeance. It judges not just actions, but intentions. Choose wisely. The crypt fell silent except for the sound of Klaus's ragged breathing. 43 hours. 43 hours to find a willing sacrifice, convince them to give up what they treasured most, and break a curse that had held for 1,000 years. All while being watched by a demon who would destroy Klaus utterly if he failed. Rebecca broke the silence. Well, At least we have a plan now. Do we? Damon's voice dripped sarcasm. Find someone Klaus loves who'll sacrifice for him? That's not a plan. That's a miracle requirement. Klaus looked at his siblings, at the Salvatores, at Bonnie. Then I'll have to create a miracle, because the alternative is unacceptable. Stefan caught the determination in Klaus's eyes. Determination mixed with genuine fear. The Penance stare had changed something fundamental in the original. For the first time in perhaps 1,000 years, Klaus Mikaelson was afraid of what he might do. We'll help, Stefan heard himself say. Not because we forgive you, but because Elena and Jenna deserve to live. Agreed, Bonnie added. But Klaus, if this is a trick, if you're planning to sacrifice Elena anyway, and this is all manipulation. It's not. Klaus's voice was raw. I swear on my family's oath, always and forever. Now I will find another way, or I will face that demon's judgment. But I will not add Elena Gilbert to the thousands of faces that now haunt me. Whether it was truth or the most elaborate lie Klaus had ever told, none of them could be sure. But for now, it was enough. 43 hours until the ritual. 43 hours to achieve the impossible. And somewhere in Mystic Falls, Ghost Rider watched and waited. Flames burning in the darkness, ready to judge them all. The Mystic Grill was unusually quiet for a Friday night. Most of the town's residents had developed an instinctive sense for when supernatural danger was escalating, missing persons reports, unexplained animal attacks, and that peculiar tension in the air that preceded violence. Tonight, that sense was screaming warnings, and the smart humans stayed home, which meant the grill was occupied almost entirely by those who couldn't. Caroline Forbes sat at the bar, nursing a glass of B-positive from the blood bank she'd borrowed from, watching the door with vampire senses on high alert. Around her, the remaining supernatural population of Mystic Falls had gathered in small clusters. Werewolves from Tyler's pack, younger vampires trying to stay under Ghost Rider's radar, and a handful of witches from covens outside town who'd felt the dimensional instability and come to investigate. Everyone was on edge. Everyone had seen the flaming skull riding through town, and everyone knew judgment was coming. Tyler Lockwood slid onto the bar stool beside her, his werewolf nature making him run hot despite the evening chill outside. "You okay?" "Define okay." Caroline's voice was tight. "There's a literal demon from hell hunting vampires. Klaus is having the world's worst mental breakdown. The ritual is in..." She checked her phone. 41 hours. And I can't stop thinking about what Bonnie said about reality collapsing. So no, Tyler, I'm not okay. Tyler signaled the bartender, Matt Donovan, one of the few fully human employees left in Mystic Falls' most supernatural-friendly establishment. 2 shots of tequila. I'm a vampire. Alcohol doesn't work on me anymore. Then you can drink without getting drunk. Consider it therapeutic. Matt placed the shots in front of them with a knowing look. He'd dated Carolyn, knew about the supernatural world, and had learned to simply roll with the apocalyptic crises that seemed to define life in this town. On the house, you both look like you need it. Caroline downed both shots in quick succession, feeling the burn that would fade in seconds as her vampire metabolism processed it. Tyler, if Ghost Rider decides to judge me, what do you think he'll see? What do you mean? I've killed people. Not a lot, but... There was the guy in the woods after I first turned. The vampire hunter last year. Others I don't like to think about. If Ghost Rider uses that Penance stare thing on me, don't. Tyler's hand covered hers. Don't torture yourself with what-ifs. You're not Klaus. You didn't spend 1,000 years murdering people for fun. But I still killed. I'm still guilty. Where's the line? How much murder is acceptable before you deserve to have a demon show you everyone you've ever hurt? Before Tyler could answer, the door to the grill opened. Klaus walked in. The entire bar went silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. Vampires froze with glasses halfway to their lips. Werewolves' eyes flickered with that warning amber glow. Everyone recognized the original hybrid, and everyone knew he was supposed to be catatonic from Ghost Rider's judgment. Klaus looked terrible. His clothes were disheveled. Blood tears had stained his shirt, and his eyes held a haunted quality that no one had ever seen in the arrogant original. But he was upright, walking, coherent. He made his way directly to Caroline's position at the bar. "Miss Forbes, may I have a word?" Caroline's vampire features flared instinctively, fight-or-flight response triggered by proximity to an apex predator. Tyler stood, putting himself partially between them. "Stay away from her, Klaus." "I mean no harm. I simply wish to speak with Caroline. Privately." "Anything you need to say to her, you can say in front of me." Tyler's voice carried the edge of his werewolf growl. Klaus's expression was patient in a way it had never been before. "Tyler, I understand your protective instinct, truly. But what I need to discuss with Caroline is personal. And if she wishes you to hear it, that's her choice to make. No, not mine to dictate." The words were so unlike Klaus's usual imperious demands that everyone within earshot was staring. Caroline exchanged a glance with Tyler, then nodded. "It's okay. I'll hear him out. I'm a vampire, Tyler. If he tries anything, I'm fast enough to escape. And with Ghost Rider watching everyone, Klaus isn't exactly in a position to hurt me." She stood, gesturing to one of the back booths. 5 minutes, Klaus, then you leave." They moved to the booth, one of the private ones in the corner where Caroline had shared countless meals and conversations in her human life. Klaus slid in across from her, and for the first time in their complicated relationship, he looked genuinely vulnerable. "Thank you for speaking with me," he began. Clocks ticking. "What do you want?" Klaus took an unnecessary breath, old human habits surfacing under stress. "Ayana told us there's a way to break my curse without killing Elena. It requires a willing sacrifice from someone I love." Caroline's expression hardened. "And you thought you'd ask me?" "Klaus, I'm not asking you to sacrifice for me." Klaus held up his hands. "That would be absurd. We barely know each other beyond the complicated dance of threats and occasional moments of something else. I wouldn't presume to ask that of you." "Then why am I here?" "Because I need to understand something." Klaus's haunted eyes met hers. The Penance stare showed me every person I've killed, every life I've destroyed, and among all those faces, I saw something I hadn't expected. What? Guilt, and not about the killing itself. I've always known I was a monster. But guilt about the waste. All those people had potential, had lives they should have lived, had love they should have experienced. I stole that from them, and one of the memories that haunted me most was of a girl in the 1700s who reminded me of you. Caroline went very still. "What are you talking about?" Her name was Camille. She was radiant, full of life and compassion despite living in brutal times. I was fascinated by her, the same way I am by you. The way you choose to be kind and hopeful even though you're a vampire surrounded by darkness. Klaus's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I killed her because I was bored one evening and she was convenient. I didn't even compel her to forget the terror. I drained her and left her body in an alley." The confession hung between them. Caroline felt sick, even though vampires didn't get nauseous. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because the Penance stare made me feel what she felt. The betrayal, the fear, the final thought wondering why someone she'd thought was kind turned out to be a monster." Klaus's hands were shaking on the table. "And I realized that with you, I have the chance to be different, to not waste something beautiful because I'm too damaged to recognize its value." "Klaus," Caroline didn't know what to say. This level of vulnerability from the original hybrid was completely foreign territory. "I'm not asking for love, or forgiveness, or sacrifice. Klaus leaned forward. I'm asking you to help me understand what it means to choose differently. Because in 41 hours, I'll perform the ritual or I'll face Ghost Rider's final judgment. And I don't know how to be the person who deserves a willing sacrifice. Caroline studied him. Really studied him. The blood tears that had dried on his face. The way his hands trembled slightly. The genuine fear in his eyes. This wasn't Klaus the manipulator. This was Klaus the broken monster trying desperately to figure out how to be something else. You want to know how to be worthy of love, she said quietly. I want to know how to be worthy of existing. Love seems impossibly distant. From across the grill, Tyler was watching them intently, his werewolf senses probably picking up every word. Matt was cleaning glasses, but clearly eavesdropping. And scattered around the bar, the supernatural beings were all pretending not to stare at the original hybrid having an emotional crisis. Caroline made a decision. Okay, I'll help you. Not because I care about you breaking your curse, but because Elena and Jenna deserve to live. And if teaching you basic empathy accomplishes that, fine. How do we start? By you actually listening for once. Caroline pulled out her phone, scrolling to her photos. These are the people I love. My mom, she's human, she's the sheriff, and she knows about vampires, but still loves me. Elena, my best friend, who stood by me through becoming a vampire and all the insanity. Bonnie, who saved my life more times than I can count. She showed him each photo. These people are why I choose to be good. Not because I'm naturally good. Trust me, the vampire parts of me want to rip throats and rule the town, but because love makes being good worth the effort. Klaus looked at the photos with an expression Caroline couldn't quite read. I had that once, before we were turned. My family, mother, father, siblings, we loved each other. Then my mother turned us into monsters. My father tried to kill me, and 1,000 years of running destroyed whatever familial bonds we had. You still have Elijah and Rebecca. They're still here. Are they? Or do they simply stay out of loyalty to our blood oath, always and forever binding them to a monster who's given them nothing but pain? Klaus's voice cracked. The Penance stare showed me what I've done to them too. Every time I've daggered Rebecca for disappointing me. Every betrayal of Elijah's trust. And I'm the cancer at the center of our family, Caroline. How does one atone for that? Caroline reached across the table and did something she'd never done before. She took Klaus's hand. Not romantically, not fearfully, just humanly. You start by admitting it, which you just did. Then you start making different choices. One at a time, until the good choices outnumber the bad ones. That could take centuries. Then it's good you're immortal. Klaus actually laughed, a broken, bitter sound, but genuine. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. But it's possible. I've seen Stefan fight his ripper nature every single day. I've watched Elena choose to be compassionate, even when revenge would be easier. Hell, I've seen Damon try to be a better person because he loves Elena. If they can do it, but you can too. Before Klaus could respond, the temperature in the grill dropped 20 degrees. Frost formed on the windows, and every supernatural being in the building felt it. That presence of absolute judgment. Ghost Rider appeared in the doorway, flames casting dancing shadows across the bar. Every vampire in the building vamped to the back exit instinctively. The werewolves shifted toward defensive positions. Matt dropped the glass he was holding, which shattered on the floor. Klaus Mikaelson, Ghost Rider's voice echoed. I sense no ritual preparation, no murderous intent toward the doppelganger. Klaus stood slowly, putting himself between Ghost Rider and Caroline. I'm seeking another way, as you suggested. I did not suggest. I demanded you choose differently or face judgment. Semantics. Klaus's voice was surprisingly steady. I'm here because I'm trying to understand what it means to be worthy of a willing sacrifice. Miss Forbes was kind enough to educate me. Ghost Rider's burning gaze shifted to Caroline. You helped the monster who would kill your friend? Caroline stood as well, her vampire nature overriding her fear. I helped because Elena deserves to live, and because... She glanced at Klaus. Because even monsters deserve a chance to change. Isn't that what you want? For people to choose to be better? The spirit of vengeance was silent for a long moment. Then Johnny Blaze's more human voice emerged. She's brave to sit with someone who terrifies her, to offer compassion to a murderer. I'm not offering compassion, Caroline corrected. I'm offering education. There's a difference. Ghost Rider moved further into the grill, and everyone pressed back against the walls, creating a wide berth. He approached the booth where Klaus and Caroline stood. 40 hours remain. Have you found your willing sacrifice? Not yet, but I'm beginning to understand what it would require. Klaus met Ghost Rider's burning gaze without flinching. True love. Genuine connection. The kind that makes sacrifice meaningful rather than transactional. I don't have that yet, but I'm trying to learn what it looks like. And if you fail, then you'll do what you came here to do. Judge me. Destroy me. Whatever justice demands. Klaus's voice was quiet, but certain. But I will not kill Elena Gilbert. Not after seeing the faces of all the innocents I've already destroyed. And I can't add another. Ghost Rider's flames flickered, that internal struggle between the spirit of vengeance and Johnny Blaze visible to everyone watching. Finally, 40 hours. Then we see if monsters can truly choose to be better. He turned to leave, but Caroline called out, Wait, you keep saying you'll judge Klaus. But what about everyone else? All of us have done things wrong. Where's the line? Who's guilty enough to deserve the penance stare? Ghost Rider's skull turned back. Everyone is guilty of something, but guilt is not binary. It exists on a spectrum. So who decides where on the spectrum someone crosses from made mistakes to deserves eternal torment? The question clearly troubled him. The flames around his skull burned brighter, then dimmer. The spirit of vengeance judges, based on the weight of sin. But you're right, the line is not always clear. Then maybe, Caroline said carefully, absolute judgment isn't the answer. Maybe justice should be about growth and change, not just punishment. Johnny Blaze's voice was stronger now, fighting for control. That's what I used to believe, before I became this. But the spirit, it only knows black and white, guilty and innocent, justice and vengeance. Which one are you? Klaus asked suddenly. Justice or vengeance? The entire grill held its breath. Ghost Rider stood in the center of the room, flames crackling, a being caught between absolute judgment and human doubt. Finally, he spoke. I don't know anymore. And with that admission, perhaps the most honest words the spirit of vengeance had ever spoken, Ghost Rider walked out of the mystic grill, mounted his motorcycle, and disappeared into the night. The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler was the first to move, rushing to Caroline's side. Are you insane? Talking back to the demon like that? Someone had to. Caroline was shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Did you hear him? He doesn't even know if he's about justice or vengeance anymore. That's sad, actually. Klaus sank back into the booth, looking exhausted. You may have just saved my life, Miss Forbes, by making him question his own purpose. I wasn't trying to save you. I was trying to understand him. Caroline looked toward the door where Ghost Rider had exited. There's a person in there. A human soul trapped with a demon, forced to do things he maybe doesn't want to do anymore. So that's its own kind of hell. Matt came over with a broom to clean up the broken glass. So what happens now? Do we all just wait for the 40-hour countdown to hit zero? We keep looking for a solution, Klaus said. A willing sacrifice from someone I love. Though after tonight, he looked at Caroline. I'm beginning to understand what love actually means, and why it's so rare. Caroline met his eyes. Don't confuse gratitude with love, Klaus. I helped you tonight because it was right, not because I have feelings for you. I know, but you've shown me something I haven't seen in centuries. Genuine kindness without expectation of reward. That's revolutionary for someone like me. Tyler's growl was barely suppressed. Klaus, you should go. Agreed. Klaus stood, straightening his disheveled clothes. Miss Forbes, thank you for your time and wisdom. I will not forget this conversation. As he walked toward the door, Rebecca appeared, having clearly been waiting outside. She fell into step beside him, and Caroline heard her whisper. Did it work? Did she agree to help? In her own way, yes, though not how we planned. They disappeared into the night, leaving Caroline with Tyler and a grill full of supernaturals who just witnessed the impossible. Klaus Mikaelson being vulnerable and Ghost Rider questioning his own purpose. Caroline's phone buzzed. A text from Bonnie. Where are you? Something's happening with the other side. Need you at the boarding house now. She showed Tyler the text. We should go. What about Klaus? Are you really going to help him find a willing sacrifice? Caroline stood, leaving money on the bar for Matt. I'm going to help keep Elena and Jenna alive. If that means teaching Klaus how to be a decent being for 40 hours, I'll do it. But Tyler, I'm not sacrificing for him, and I'm not falling for whatever complicated emotions he's trying to manipulate me into feeling. Good, because for a minute there, you seemed almost sympathetic to him. I can be sympathetic to a broken person trying to change without being romantically interested in them. Klaus has 1,000 years of murder to atone for. One conversation in a bar doesn't erase that. They headed for the door, but Caroline paused, looking back at the grill, at the supernatural beings slowly returning to their drinks and conversations, at Matt cleaning up broken glass with the weary patience of someone who'd seen too much, at the scorch marks Ghost Rider had left on the floor, and 40 hours until the ritual. 40 hours for Klaus to find love and sacrifice. 40 hours for Ghost Rider to decide if he was justice or vengeance. 40 hours for reality to hold together before dimensional barriers collapsed. Some days, Caroline muttered, I really miss being human and oblivious. Tyler took her hand as they walked into the night. Would you really want to go back? To not knowing about any of this? Caroline considered. No, because then I wouldn't understand what we're fighting for. And right now, with everything falling apart, understanding is the only thing keeping me sane. They headed toward the Salvatore boarding house, where Bonnie's crisis awaited. Behind them, the Mystic Grill returned to its uneasy normalcy. Supernaturals pretending to be human, humans pretending not to notice, and everyone pretending they weren't counting down the hours until judgment arrived. Somewhere in the darkness, Ghost Rider rode through Mystic Falls streets, his flames reflecting off shop windows and casting long shadows. Johnny Blaze was stronger now, fighting harder for control, questioning every judgment the spirit demanded. And in that internal struggle lay the seed of something dangerous and beautiful. The possibility that even absolute judgment could learn mercy. But time was running out. And in Mystic Falls, time always demanded its price in blood. The Salvatore boarding house library was chaos. Bonnie stood in the center of a massive spell circle, her hands glowing with green-gold energy so intense it cast shadows that seemed to move independently. Books floated around her, grimoires from 3 centuries of Bennett witches, all open to pages about dimensional magic, binding spells, and the nature of hell itself. Stefan and Damon flanked her position, ready to intervene if the magic got out of control. Elena sat on the couch with Jeremy, her younger brother who'd arrived an hour ago after sensing something was wrong through whatever mystical connection siblings shared. And in the corner, Elijah stood with perfect posture, observing everything with aristocratic concern. The problem was simple and catastrophic. The other side was collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. I can see them," Bonnie gasped, sweat beading on her forehead. "All the dead supernatural beings. They're trying to come through. The barrier is so thin now that they're practically in the room with us." Stefan moved closer. "Bonnie, you need to stop. This is too dangerous." "I can't stop. If the other side collapses completely while Ghost Rider is still here, both hell dimensions will merge with our reality. Every demon, every tortured soul, every evil thing that's ever died, it all comes flooding in." Bonnie's eyes were distant, seeing things the others couldn't. "My ancestors are showing me what happens. It's apocalyptic." Carolyn and Tyler burst through the front door, followed moments later by Klaus and Rebecca. The original hybrid looked marginally more composed than before, though his eyes still held that haunted quality. What's happening?" Caroline demanded. Damon gestured at the magical light show. "Bonnie's having a dimensional meltdown. The other side is apparently having a going-out-of-business sale, and everything must go." "This isn't funny, Damon," Elena snapped. "If what Bonnie's saying is true, I know it's not funny. I'm using humor as a coping mechanism because the alternative is screaming." Elijah stepped forward. "Miss Bennett, is there anything we can do to stabilize the barrier?" Bonnie's concentration wavered, and the floating grimoires dropped several inches before she caught them again. "The only way to stabilize it is to remove the dimensional interference, which means sending Ghost Rider back to his own hell." "And how do we do that?" Klaus asked. "The demon has made it clear he won't leave until he's rendered judgment on me." "Then maybe we accelerate your timeline," Rebecca suggested. "Instead of waiting 40 hours, we find a willing sacrifice now. Break the curse, save Elena, give Ghost Rider what he wants, and send him home before reality implodes." "Brilliant plan," Damon said, "except for the minor detail that Klaus still hasn't found anyone willing to sacrifice for him. Raise your hand if you love Klaus Mikaelson enough to give up what you treasure most." He looked around the room. "Anyone? No takers? Shocking." Klaus's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. The Penance stare had shown him exactly why no one would sacrifice for him. Caroline's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her expression shifted to alarm. "It's my mom. So she says there are reports coming in, people seeing things that aren't there. Dead relatives, monsters, hallucinations. It's happening all over town." "The barriers are thinning," Bonnie said, her voice strained. "Reality and the other side are bleeding into each other. People with even a little psychic sensitivity are seeing through the veil." Jeremy stood up. "I'm seeing them too. Vicky Donovan just walked past that window, and Anna, she's standing right behind Damon." Damon spun around, but of course saw nothing. "That's not creepy at all." "This is accelerating," Stefan said. "Bonnie, how long do we actually have?" Bonnie consulted the ancestral connection, her eyes going distant. When she refocused, her expression was grim. 12 hours, maybe less. After that, the barrier breaks completely and everything comes through. The room went silent except for the crackling of Bonnie's magic and the sound of pages turning on the floating grimoires. 12 hours. They'd lost almost a day and a half of their timeline. Elijah was the first to speak. "Then we need to make a decision. Either we find Klaus's willing sacrifice in the next 12 hours, or we consider alternative options." "What alternatives?" Elena asked. "I perform the ritual as originally planned," Klaus said quietly. "Kill you, break my curse, and hope Ghost Rider accepts that as sufficient justice to leave this dimension." "No." Stefan's voice was flat. "That's not an option." "It may be the only option if we want to prevent the apocalypse. There has to be another way." The temperature dropped. Frost spread across the windows. On a ghost rider appeared in the doorway, flames reflecting off the antique furnishings. "You speak of sacrifice and alternatives," his layered voice echoed. "While reality fractures around you, I feel it, both hells pulling at each other, trying to merge." Bonnie's magic flared defensively. "Then leave. Go back to your own dimension and stop this. My work is not finished. Your work is destroying everything." Elena stood up, her fear transforming into anger. "You came here to judge Klaus. Fine. But now your presence is going to kill everyone in this town, guilty and innocent alike. Is that justice?" Ghost Rider's flames burned brighter, but Johnny Blaze's voice emerged, conflicted. "She's right. We're causing collateral damage. The thing we're supposed to prevent. The guilty must face judgment," the spirit of vengeance insisted, and the voice layered and absolute. "That is our purpose. But at what cost?" Johnny Blaze fought for control, his more human voice becoming clearer. "If we destroy the innocent while punishing the guilty, then we're no better than the monsters we hunt." The internal struggle was visible. Ghost Rider's flames flickering erratically, his skeletal form wavering between positions as spirit and human wrestled for dominance. Klaus stepped forward carefully. "Spirit of vengeance, Johnny Blaze, whichever of you is listening, I offer you a deal. You have nothing to offer that would satisfy justice. I offer you certainty, a guaranteed judgment. Let me attempt to find my willing sacrifice in the next 12 hours. If I succeed, the ritual proceeds without killing Elena Gilbert. If I fail..." Klaus's voice was steady despite the magnitude of what he was saying. "If I fail, I submit to your judgment willingly. No resistance, no escape. You can use the penance stare on me until my mind shatters completely, then destroy me however you see fit. Complete and total justice for 1,000 years of sin." Rebecca gasped. "Nick, no, it's the only way, sister." Klaus didn't take his eyes off Ghost Rider. "Either I prove I'm capable of change by earning a willing sacrifice, or I prove I'm not by failing. Either way, you get your resolution, and you can return to your dimension before reality collapses." Elijah's expression was carefully controlled, but his voice carried tension. "Niklaus, submitting to the penance stare permanently would be worse than death. You've already experienced a fraction of what it does, and a sustained exposure would destroy me. I know. I'm willing to accept that if it means saving Elena and preventing the apocalypse." Damon looked genuinely surprised. Did Klaus Mikaelson just offer to sacrifice himself? Is this real life? "The penance stare showed me what I truly am," Klaus said quietly. "A monster who spent a millennium justifying atrocities. If I can't prove I'm capable of something better, if I can't earn genuine love and willing sacrifice, then perhaps I deserve exactly what the spirit of vengeance would give me." Ghost Rider was silent, the internal debate between Johnny and the spirit playing out in the flickering of his flames. Finally, Johnny Blaze's voice emerged more clearly than it had before. "I accept your terms. 12 hours. Find your willing sacrifice. Prove that monsters can change. You submit to final judgment." "This is weakness," the spirit of vengeance protested. "We should judge him now." "But that's not justice," Johnny argued, his voice strengthening. "That's just vengeance. And I'm starting to remember the difference." The flames stabilized. Ghost Rider's voice became unified again, both spirit and human speaking together. 12 hours, Klaus Mikaelson. Prove yourself worthy of redemption or face eternal damnation." With that, Ghost Rider turned and left, his motorcycle roaring to life outside. The sound of the engine faded into the distance, leaving only the lingering scent of brimstone. Bonnie's spell circle collapsed, the grimoires falling to the floor. She stumbled, and Stefan caught her. The pressures lessened slightly. a ghost rider agreeing to leave after judgment. The dimensional barriers recognized that as a commitment. It bought us a little more time. "How much?" Caroline asked. 12 hours, like he said. But that's it. After that, barriers break regardless of what we do. Klaus was already moving toward the door. "Then I need to start looking for my willing sacrifice immediately." "Wait." Elena's voice stopped him. "Klaus, who are you even going to ask? You've established that your siblings can't sacrifice because you won't allow it. Who else is there?" Klaus's haunted eyes met hers. "I don't know. But the Penance stare showed me something important. I've wasted 1,000 years never truly connecting with anyone, never allowing myself to love or be loved, so always holding everyone at arm's length because vulnerability was weakness." "And now?" Stefan asked. "Now I understand that connection is strength, that love is what makes existence meaningful rather than just endless time." Klaus looked around the room at the people who had every reason to hate him. "I have 12 hours to find what I've never had in a millennium. It's impossible, but I have to try." Rebecca moved to her brother's side. "We'll help you, Nick." "How? You can't sacrifice for me, and you can't force someone else to love me." "No, but we can help you understand what you're looking for." Rebecca's voice was gentle. "You've never been good at vulnerability, at opening yourself to genuine connection. Maybe in the next 12 hours, we teach you how." Elijah joined them. So a crash course in emotional authenticity for a 1,000-year-old hybrid. Ambitious, but not impossible. Where do we even start? Klaus looked lost, an expression no one had ever seen on the confident original. Caroline surprised everyone by speaking up. "We start with honesty. Real, uncomfortable, complete honesty about who you are and what you've done. No manipulation, no charm, no 1,000-year-old seduction routine. Just truth. And who would I be honest with? Who would even listen?" "I will." The voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned. Camille O'Connell stood there, a human psychologist who'd recently moved to Mystic Falls from New Orleans, where she'd had her own complicated encounter with supernatural politics. She'd met Klaus briefly, had been compelled and manipulated by him, and had every reason to hate him. But she'd also studied psychology, understood trauma and redemption, and had a peculiar talent for seeing the human buried beneath the monster. Klaus stared at her. "Camille, what are you doing here?" I felt the dimensional instability. Even humans with psychological training can sense when reality is fracturing. We just usually chalk it up to mass hysteria or shared delusion. She entered the room fully. "But I know what you are now, what you all are, and I heard what you said about needing to find a willing sacrifice. You heard that? You were listening." I was outside, trying to decide if I should come in or run away from Mystic Falls and never look back. Camille's voice was steady. "I chose to come in." "Why?" Klaus's voice held genuine confusion. "Because I'm a therapist, Klaus. My entire career is built on the belief that people can change, can heal, can become better than their worst moments. And you..." She gestured at his haunted expression, the blood tears still staining his clothes. "You look like someone who's just had the worst therapy session in history and actually wants to do the work." Damon snorted. "Are you seriously offering to therapize Klaus Mikaelson? He's a 1,000-year-old mass murderer, not a patient with abandonment issues. Actually, I'd bet he has significant abandonment issues. And narcissistic personality disorder. And probably PTSD from his abusive father. The mass murder is a symptom, not the core problem." Klaus laughed, bitter and broken. "You want to psychoanalyze me? I just experienced every kill I've ever committed. I'm fairly certain I'm beyond therapy." "Maybe. But you have 12 hours to find a willing sacrifice from someone you love. That requires vulnerability and genuine connection. Two things you're notoriously bad at. You need help learning how to be authentic." Camille met his eyes without flinching. "And I'm offering to help." Not because I love you or plan to sacrifice for you, but because I believe in the possibility of redemption, even for monsters." The room was silent. Everyone was staring at Camille like she'd announced plans to juggle chainsaws while blindfolded. Elena found her voice first. "Camille, you don't have to do this. Klaus is dangerous. I know. I've been compelled by him, manipulated by him, used as leverage against him in New Orleans. I know exactly how dangerous he is." Camille's voice was calm. "But I also know that danger often comes from pain. So when Klaus is in more pain right now than anyone I've ever seen." Klaus was watching her with an expression that might have been hope if he'd remembered what hope looked like. "You would do this, knowing what I am, what I've done?" "I would try. No promises of success. No guarantee I won't run screaming before the 12 hours are up, but..." Camille shrugged. "I'm a therapist in a town full of supernatural beings. If I can't handle one emotionally damaged hybrid, I'm in the wrong profession." Bonnie looked at Stefan, who looked at Damon, who looked at Elena. Some silent communication passed between them, the shorthand of people who'd survived too many apocalypses together. Finally, Stefan spoke. "Okay, Camille works with Klaus on the emotional authenticity thing. The rest of us focus on the practical aspects." "Which are?" Elijah asked. "To finding potential candidates for the willing sacrifice. Someone Klaus could genuinely love if he opened himself up. Someone who might actually consider sacrificing for him if he proved he'd changed." "That's a very short list," Caroline observed. "Basically his family, who he won't let sacrifice, and who else?" Tyler's eyes widened. "Wait, the sacrifice doesn't have to be death, right? Ayana said it could be something else precious. Power, immortality, freedom." "That's correct," Elijah confirmed. "The spell requires willing sacrifice of something deeply valued, not necessarily a life." "Then the list gets longer," Tyler continued. "What about someone who values their humanity, or their freedom, or even their memories?" Klaus was shaking his head. "I wouldn't ask someone to give up their humanity for me. But that's exactly the kind of thing the old Klaus would demand," Camille interrupted. "But the new Klaus, the one who's trying to change, would allow someone to make that choice for themselves. You don't get to decide what someone else's sacrifice should be." Klaus absorbed this. "You're right, I'm not used to giving others agency." "No kidding," Damon muttered. "Control freak much?" "Damon, not helping," Elena said. She turned to Klaus. "Okay, so we have 12 hours. Camille helps you learn emotional authenticity. The rest of us brainstorm who might be willing to sacrifice and what that sacrifice might look like. Then you actually ask them, genuinely, without compulsion or manipulation." "And if no one agrees?" Klaus asked quietly. "Then you face Ghost Rider's judgment like you promised," Stefan said. "But at least you'll have tried. At least you'll have proven you're capable of growth, even if it's not enough." Klaus looked around the room at the people who hated him, feared him, or at best tolerated him. At Camille, offering help despite every reason not to. At his siblings, standing by him despite centuries of betrayal. At Elena, the innocent he'd planned to kill, now trying to help him find another way. "Thank you," he said simply. "All of you. I don't deserve this assistance, but I'm grateful for it." "Save the gratitude," Bonnie said, her magic still flickering around her hands. "Just don't make us regret helping you." Rebecca pulled Klaus toward the door. "Come on, Nick. Camille's therapy session starts now. You have 12 hours to learn what it took the rest of us a lifetime to understand." As they left, Klaus, Rebecca, Elijah, Matt, and Camille, the remaining group exchanged uncertain looks. "Did we just agree to help Klaus Mikaelson find love?" Caroline asked incredulously. "We agreed to help save Elena and prevent the apocalypse," Stefan corrected. "If Klaus finding love is the mechanism, then yes." "This is insane," Tyler said. "Even for Mystic Falls, this is insane." Jeremy, who'd been quiet throughout, finally spoke. What about Ghost Rider? He's out there right now, watching all of this. What if he decides Klaus's attempt at redemption isn't good enough? Bonnie's expression was troubled. Then we have a bigger problem, because Johnny Blaze and the Spirit of Vengeance are fighting for control. If the Spirit wins completely, there's no mercy, just judgment. And if Johnny wins, Elena asked, then maybe Ghost Rider lets Klaus go, even if the sacrifice isn't perfect. Because Johnny understands what it's like to be bound to a demon, to struggle against your own nature. Bonnie looked toward where Ghost Rider had exited. He's as trapped as any of us, maybe more. Outside, somewhere in the darkness of Mystic Falls, Ghost Rider rode through streets where reality was beginning to fracture. He could see them, the dead pressing against the veil, demons sensing weakness in the dimensional barriers, souls trying to claw their way back to life. Johnny Blaze fought for control, his human consciousness stronger than it had been in years. We have to give Klaus the chance. We have to believe redemption is possible. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? The point is justice, the Spirit insisted. The guilty must pay for their crimes. But what if payment looks like genuine change instead of destruction? What if justice is about making things right, not just punishing what's wrong? The Spirit of Vengeance had no answer. So Ghost Rider continued his patrol, watching a town on the edge of dimensional collapse, waiting to see if a monster could learn to love. 12 hours remained. The clock was ticking, and in Mystic Falls, everyone was running out of time. The abandoned church on the outskirts of Mystic Falls had been Klaus's hideout during his initial arrival in town, a place where he'd performed dark rituals and plotted Elena's death. Now, ironically, it had become the site of his potential redemption. Camille sat across from Klaus in one of the old pews, a notebook balanced on her knee. The vampire-werewolf hybrid looked profoundly uncomfortable with the entire setup, his 1,000-year-old instincts screaming that vulnerability was weakness. Rebecca and Elijah had positioned themselves near the entrance, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to give privacy. The moon shone through broken stained glass windows, casting colored shadows across the dusty floor. "Let's start simple," Camille said, her therapist voice calm and professional. "Tell me about the first person you killed after becoming a vampire." Klaus's jaw tightened. "That's not simple." "No, it's not, but authenticity never is. You have..." She checked her watch. 11 hours and 43 minutes to learn how to connect genuinely with someone. We're starting with honesty about who you've been. "I know who I've been." The Penance stare made that devastatingly clear. Knowing and speaking are different. The Penance stare forced you to feel. Now you need to articulate. Put words to the experience. That's how trauma gets processed instead of just festering. Klaus was silent for a long moment. Then, his name was Henrik. "Not my brother. We named him after my brother, a boy in a village 3 days after we transformed. He was maybe 8 years old. Yet he looked so much like the Henrik I'd lost that His voice cracked. I couldn't help myself. The bloodlust was overwhelming and he smelled so alive, and I just drained him in an alley behind his family's home." Camille didn't react with horror or judgment. She simply nodded and wrote in her notebook. "And how did you feel afterward?" "Guilty, horrified. I'd killed a child who looked like my dead brother. What kind of monster does that?" "You tell me." Klaus's eyes flashed amber, hybrid nature surfacing with emotion. A monster who was running from grief and pain, who'd just been turned into an abomination by his own mother, who discovered his real father wasn't the man who raised him, but a werewolf his mother had an affair with. A monster who was so broken inside that he broke everything around him. That's context, Klaus. Has important context. But it doesn't answer the question, what kind of monster kills a child? The kind who's in pain and doesn't know how to process it except through violence. Klaus's hands were shaking. The kind who spent the next 1,000 years proving that first kill wasn't an aberration, but a pattern. The kind who... He stopped, blood tears forming. The kind who's only now, after a demon showed him every victim's face, beginning to understand what he's actually done. Camille leaned forward. Do you want to change? Really, genuinely want to? Or do you just want to avoid Ghost Rider's judgment? The question hit like a physical blow. Klaus was silent for several heartbeats. I don't know how to separate those motivations. Fear of judgment and desire for change feel tangled together. That's honest. Good. Now untangle them. And if Ghost Rider disappeared right now, if all consequences vanished, would you still want to be different? Klaus thought about it. Really thought. The Penance stare had shown him not just his victims, but the waste. All those lives he'd destroyed, all that potential extinguished, all for what? Temporary satisfaction? Ego? Fear? Yes, he said finally. I think I would. Because the Penance stare showed me something more terrible than the crimes themselves. It showed me how empty my existence has been. 1,000 years of killing and running and never connecting, never allowing myself to love or be loved. I don't want another 1,000 years of that emptiness. Why not? Because it's not living. It's just existing with a body count. Camille smiled slightly. There it is, at the beginning of actual insight. She flipped a page in her notebook. Now, harder question. Who have you genuinely loved in your 1,000 years? And I mean loved, not obsessed over or controlled or manipulated. Actually loved. Klaus considered. My siblings. Despite everything, I love Elijah and Rebecca. They're the only constants in my life. What about romantic love? I've been infatuated, obsessed, fascinated by various people over the centuries, but love? He shook his head. I don't know if I'm capable of it. Every time I've gotten close to someone, I either killed them, drove them away, or turned them into something I could control. That's the pattern you need to break in. She checked her watch again. 11 hours and 27 minutes. Thus you need to find someone you could genuinely love and convince them to willingly sacrifice for you. But you can't convince anyone of something you don't actually feel yourself. So teach me, how does one learn to love when they've spent a millennium avoiding it? Camille set down her notebook. You start by understanding what love actually is. It's not control or possession or even intense attraction. Love is seeing someone fully, flaws and all, and choosing them anyway. It's vulnerability. It's giving someone the power to hurt you and trusting them not to. Klaus laughed bitterly. And you wonder why I've avoided it. Every time I've been vulnerable, I've been betrayed. My mother, my father, even my siblings when they sided with our enemies. That's not them betraying you. That's you betraying them by being someone they couldn't support. So there's a difference. The words hit hard. Klaus opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. The Penance stare had shown him exactly that pattern, hurting people, then feeling betrayed when they didn't stand by him unconditionally. You're right, he admitted. I've confused loyalty with complicity. Expected my siblings to support me even when I was objectively wrong. Awareness is the first step. But awareness without action is just informed monstrosity. Camille stood up. Come on, we're taking a field trip. Where? To see the people whose lives you've affected. You've seen your victims through the Penance stare. Now you need to see the living people whose existence you've complicated. Klaus followed her out of the church, Rebecca and Elijah trailing behind. Camille led them through Mystic Falls' quiet streets, quieter than usual, and as more residents stayed inside, sensing the dimensional instability even if they couldn't name it. They stopped first at the Lockwood mansion. Tyler was inside, and through the window, Klaus could see him packing, preparing to leave town before the apocalypse hit. Tyler Lockwood, Camille said. You forced him to transform into a hybrid. Killed him, fed him your blood, forced the transition. How do you think that affected his life? Klaus's voice was quiet. I robbed him of choice, made him into something he didn't want to be, sired him to me so he had no free will. And when he broke the sire bond, I tried to kill him, multiple times, because he dared to want freedom. Do you see why he might not be willing to sacrifice for you? Obviously. They moved on, past the Gilbert house, so where Elena's Aunt Jenna had lived before Klaus's ritual would claim her. Past the Forbes house, where Caroline's mother worried about her vampire daughter. Past the Salvatore boarding house, where Stefan still fought his Ripper nature, a nature Klaus had deliberately triggered and exploited. Each stop was a reminder of lives Klaus had damaged, complicated, or destroyed. Finally, they stopped at the cemetery. Camille led Klaus to a specific grave, recent, the earth still fresh. Carol Lockwood, Camille read from the headstone. Tyler's mother. She died 6 months ago in a conflict with your hybrid ritual preparations. Tyler loved her, and your actions took her from him. Klaus stared at the grave, feeling the weight of it. The Penance stare had shown him Carol Lockwood's death, but seeing the physical grave where Tyler would come to mourn made it more real. I can't undo any of this, Klaus said. 1,000 years of damage, and I can't take any of it back. No, you can't, but you can stop adding to it, and you can start making different choices. From the shadows near a mausoleum, a voice spoke. Touching. The monster develops a conscience. Klaus spun. Catherine Pierce, the doppelganger who'd spent 500 years running from Klaus, stood there with her usual smirk, but her eyes held something else. Calculation. Catherine, Klaus said warily. What are you doing here? Watching you have a breakdown in slow motion. It's entertaining. She sauntered closer. I heard you need a willing sacrifice. Someone you love who'll give up something precious for you. And your offering? Klaus's voice was skeptical. Ah, God, no. I hate you. You've spent 5 centuries hunting me, killed everyone I've ever cared about, made my existence a living hell. I wouldn't sacrifice a hangnail for you. Then why are you here? Catherine's expression shifted to something almost sincere. Because I know what it's like to be the monster everyone hates. To run for so long you forget what you're running toward. And I'm curious if redemption is actually possible, or if we're all just permanently broken. Camille studied Catherine with professional interest. You're testing him, seeing if his change is real or performance. Smart therapist. Catherine circled Klaus like a predator assessing prey. I've known Klaus for 500 years. I've seen him charm, seduce, manipulate, and murder his way across continents. If he's genuinely changing, it would be as remarkable. But I don't believe it. Why not? Klaus asked. Because people don't change, Klaus. Not really. We just get better at pretending. Is that what you believe? After 500 years of running, you haven't changed at all? Catherine's mask slipped for just a moment. I've survived. That's all that matters. No, Klaus said quietly, the realization hitting him. That's not all that matters. I've spent 1,000 years believing the same thing, that survival was enough, that power was protection, that never letting anyone close meant never being hurt. The Penance stare showed me how wrong I was. One traumatic vision doesn't undo a millennium of patterns. No, it doesn't. But it can be a catalyst. Catherine, you and I are not so different. Both running from pain, both using control as armor, both terrified of vulnerability. The difference is, I've finally seen what that fear has cost me. Catherine was quiet, her usual bravado fading. And what has it cost you? Everything that actually matters. Connection, love, the possibility of being someone other than the monster. For a long moment, Catherine just looked at him. Then she shook her head. You're either genuinely changing or you're running the longest con in history. I can't tell which. Neither can I, Klaus admitted. "But I'm trying to figure it out He glanced at Camille, who checked her watch and held up 10 fingers, then 1. 11 hours. I'll know if I'm capable of redemption or if I really am just a monster." Catherine turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth. I hope you make it, because if you can change, then maybe there's hope for the rest of us monsters too." She disappeared into the night with vampire speed, leaving Klaus, Camille, Rebecca, and Elijah in the cemetery. "That was unexpected," Elijah observed. "Catherine spent 500 years defining herself as your victim," Camille said to Klaus. "If you actually change, it challenges her entire identity. She's not sure if she wants you to succeed or fail." "What about you?" Klaus asked Camille. "Do you want me to succeed?" "I want Elena and Jenna to live. I want reality not to collapse. Whether you personally find redemption." She considered. "I believe in the possibility, but belief and certainty are different things. You need to convince me, and more importantly, convince whoever you ask to sacrifice that your change is real." Klaus's phone buzzed. A text from Stefan. "Found a potential candidate, someone who might sacrifice for you. Meet at the grill in 30 minutes. Klaus showed the text to the others. "Who could it possibly be? I've hurt everyone in this town." "Maybe that's the point," Rebecca said. "Maybe it's someone who's been hurt the worst and still chooses forgiveness." They headed toward the Mystic Grill, Klaus's mind racing. Who would sacrifice for him? Who could possibly love him enough after everything he'd done? At the grill, they found Stefan and Damon waiting with an unexpected guest, Bonnie Bennett. The witch looked exhausted, her magic use taking a visible toll, but her expression was determined as Klaus entered. "Bonnie?" Klaus was genuinely surprised. "You're the candidate?" "God, no," Bonnie said immediately. "I'm not sacrificing anything for you, but I've been consulting with my ancestors, and they showed me something. Someone from your past who might actually qualify." "Who?" "Her name is Genevieve. She's a witch you knew in New Orleans in the 1800s. You had a relationship with her, brief, complicated, but according to my ancestors, genuine on both sides." Klaus's eyes widened. "Genevieve? I haven't thought about her in decades. I compelled her to forget me after she discovered what I was. She was terrified, and I couldn't bear seeing that fear in her eyes. She's dead now," Bonnie continued. "Has been for a century. But she's on the other side, and with the barriers as thin as they are, I could potentially bring her through. Temporarily. Why would she sacrifice for me? I compelled her and erased our relationship from her memory. Because according to the ancestors, in the moments before you compelled her, she loved you. Really, genuinely loved you. And you loved her back. That emotion doesn't fully die, even with compulsion." Camille was already shaking her head. "Bringing back a dead witch during dimensional collapse. That sounds catastrophic." "It is catastrophic," Bonnie agreed. "But we're out of options. Klaus has 10 hours left, and no living person is going to sacrifice for him. A dead person who loved him before he destroyed that love. It's our best shot." Klaus looked at Bonnie with something like respect. "You would risk dimensional collapse further just to give me a chance at redemption." "I'm doing it for Elena, and for the reality that doesn't collapse. If saving you is the mechanism, fine. But Klaus," Bonnie's expression was hard. "If this doesn't work, if Genevieve refuses or the spell fails, you face Ghost Rider like you promised. No backing out, no last-minute betrayals. Understood?" "Understood." Damon looked skeptical. "So our plan is, summon dead ex-girlfriend, hope she still loves Klaus despite him memory wiping her, and then leaving her to die, convince her to sacrifice something precious from beyond the grave, and use that to break the curse. Simple. Nothing could go wrong." "It's our only play," Stefan said, "unless you have a better idea." Damon was quiet. He didn't. Bonnie pulled out her phone, calling Elena. "I need you at the cemetery, the old Bennett family tomb. Bring candles and tell Carolyn to bring blood from the blood bank. Human blood, specifically Klaus's preferred type. And Elena, bring a picture of Jenna." "Why Jenna's picture?" Klaus asked. "Because Genevieve needs to see who she's saving if she agrees to this. She needs to see the innocent who'll die if she refuses. Motivation matters in sacrifice magic." They moved as a group toward the cemetery, the same one Klaus had just visited with Camille. The Bennett family tomb was ancient, its entrance marked with protective symbols that glowed faintly with ancestral magic. Bonnie began preparing the spell, drawing symbols on the stone floor with chalk mixed with her own blood. Caroline arrived with the blood bags. Elena came with an armful of candles and a framed photo of Jenna, looking young and alive and unaware of the supernatural fate that awaited her. Klaus stood outside the circle, watching Bonnie work. Beside him, Camille spoke quietly. "Are you ready for this? And seeing someone you loved, who you compelled to forget you?" "No, but I don't have a choice." "You always have a choice. That's what free will means." "Then I choose to try, even if it fails, even if it's painful. I choose to try." Camille smiled slightly. "There might be hope for you yet." Bonnie finished the preparations, standing in the center of the circle. Everyone quiet. This spell requires absolute concentration and more power than I've ever channeled. If something goes wrong, if I lose control, Stefan, you pull me out, by force if necessary. Stefan nodded, moving into position. Bonnie began to chant. The language was old, older than Latin, older than the founding of America. The words of the first Bennett witches, calling to the dead across the veil. The candles ignited simultaneously. The air grew thick with power, and slowly, and impossibly, a figure began to materialize in the center of the circle. Genevieve appeared as she had in life, beautiful, young, with dark hair and eyes that held both wisdom and sorrow. She was translucent, ghostly, pulled from the other side by Bonnie's immense power. Her eyes found Klaus immediately, and the recognition there, despite the compulsion, despite death, despite everything, was instant. "Niklaus," she whispered, "I remember you. How is that possible? You compelled me to forget." "Compulsion doesn't cross the veil," Bonnie said, her voice strained for maintaining the spell. "Death broke what Klaus made you forget. You remember everything now." Genevieve's expression cycled through emotions: love, betrayal, anger, sorrow, and finally settling on something like understanding. "You compelled me because you loved me. Because seeing my fear of what you were hurt you." "Yes," Klaus said simply. "I was a coward. I couldn't face losing you, so I erased the relationship instead. I'm sorry, Genevieve, for that and for so much more. Why am I here? Why have you called me back from the other side?" Klaus stepped closer to the circle's edge. "Because I need help. I need a willing sacrifice from someone I love, and you're the only person I've ever genuinely loved outside my family." Genevieve's laugh was bitter. "You want me to sacrifice for you? After you compelled me, left me, let me die alone thinking you were just a beautiful dream I'd imagined? I know I have no right to ask. I know I've done terrible things. To you, to thousands of others, but I'm trying to change, and this sacrifice would save an innocent life." He gestured to Elena's photo. "Sir, her name is Jenna. She's going to die in a ritual meant to break my curse unless I find another way." Genevieve looked at the photo, then back at Klaus. "What would you ask me to sacrifice? I'm already dead." "Your peace," Bonnie said quietly. "Witches on the other side maintain their magic, their identity. You could sacrifice that peace, that rest, to fuel the spell. It would mean your spirit never finds rest, never moves on to whatever comes after. Eternal existence in the liminal space of the other side." "That's not sacrifice," Genevieve said. That's damnation. I know, Klaus said, and I wouldn't ask it if there was any other way, but there isn't, not in the time we have left. Genevieve was silent for a long moment, studying Klaus with eyes that had loved him once, in another life. Do you actually love me, Niklaus? Or do you just need me? Klaus thought about Camille's lessons, about authenticity and vulnerability. I don't know if I'm capable of love the way you deserve. I'm trying to learn. But I did love you, Genevieve, the best I could, with my broken, damaged heart. You were the only person who made me feel human again, even after I'd become a monster. That's not enough. I know, but it's the truth. If I do this, Genevieve said slowly, it's not for you. It's for the woman in that picture who reminds me of my own sister. It's for the choice to save an innocent rather than let your curse claim another victim. But Niklaus, yes, you don't deserve this sacrifice, and you don't deserve forgiveness. What you deserve is exactly what that demon with the flaming skull wants to give you, judgment and damnation. Klaus bowed his head. I know. But I'm going to give you mercy anyway, because someone has to break the cycle of pain and retribution. Because maybe, just maybe, you'll actually become someone worthy of this gift. Genevieve looked at Bonnie. I consent. I sacrifice my peace, my rest, my hope of moving beyond the other side. Use it to break Klaus's curse. Bonnie's hands glowed brighter. Are you certain? Once done, this can't be undone. I'm certain. The spell activated. Light poured from Genevieve's ghostly form into Bonnie's hands, then arced toward Klaus. He gasped as the magic hit him, ancient, powerful, fueled by genuine sacrifice and willing love. The hybrid curse, bound for 1,000 years by his mother's spell, began to crack. Klaus fell to his knees as the magic worked through him, rewriting the fundamental nature of his being. His werewolf side, not dormant since his first kill, surged forward. The full moon tomorrow night would trigger his transformation for the first time in a millennium. Genevieve's form was fading faster now, the sacrifice consuming her essence. Niklaus, don't waste this. Don't waste what I've given up. Become someone worth the price. I'll try. Klaus managed through the pain of transformation. I swear it. That's all anyone can do. And with that, Genevieve disappeared, not back to the other side, but into the space between, a liminal existence of eternal waiting, peace sacrificed for a monster's redemption. Bonnie collapsed, the spell complete. Stefan caught her before she hit the ground. The Bennett witch was unconscious, her power completely drained. Klaus remained on his knees, breathing heavily, feeling his nature shift and settle into something new. And the curse was broken. Tomorrow's full moon would see his first transformation, and most importantly, Elena Gilbert would live. Jenna would still die. The ritual required a vampire sacrifice. But Elena was saved. Elijah helped Klaus to his feet. Brother, how do you feel? Different, complete, and guilty that Genevieve paid such a price for my redemption. That's called a conscience, Camille said. Welcome to having one. Caroline checked her phone. We have 8 hours until the ritual time, and we still need to deal with Ghost Rider. He said he'd leave after judging Klaus. Do we think he'll accept this as sufficient? From the cemetery entrance, that familiar voice echoed, "We shall see." Ghost Rider emerged from the shadows, flames dancing around his skull. He'd been there the whole time, watching, waiting. Until Genevieve's sacrifice was genuine, he said. Born of love and choice. The curse is broken. Klaus Mikaelson lives. Klaus met Ghost Rider's burning gaze. And your judgment? Have I proven myself capable of change? Ghost Rider's flames flickered. Johnny Blaze and the spirit of vengeance debating. Finally, both voices spoke together. You have proven yourself capable of receiving sacrifice. Whether you are capable of honoring it remains to be seen. The true test is not one moment of change, but a lifetime of different choices. Then you're letting him go? Elena asked. Just like that. Just like that, Johnny Blaze's voice said, more human than before. Because vengeance without mercy is just cruelty, and I've been cruel long enough. The spirit of vengeance seemed to resist, but Johnny's consciousness was stronger now, fueled by witnessing genuine redemption. I returned to my dimension as agreed. But Klaus Mikaelson, yes, I will be watching. Not from this reality, but watching nonetheless. If you betray Genevieve's sacrifice, if you return to your old ways, I will come back, and next time, there will be no mercy. Understood? Ghost Rider turned to Bonnie, still unconscious in Stefan's arms. The barriers will restabilize once I leave. Your other side will heal. Tell the Bennett Witch she is brave. Tell her I'm sorry for the disruption. With that, Ghost Rider mounted his motorcycle. Hellfire erupted around the wheels. He rode toward the cemetery's edge, toward the place where dimensions were thinnest, and simply disappeared. The flames faded. The oppressive weight of judgment lifted. Reality took a shuddering breath and began to heal. Klaus fell to sitting on a tomb, the weight of everything hitting him at once. It's over. The curse is broken. Elena lives, and I'm free. Free and guilty, Camille noted. How does that feel? Terrible. And right. And terrifying. I've no idea what to do with freedom I didn't earn through violence. You figure it out. One day at a time. One choice at a time. Camille sat beside him. And Klaus, for what it's worth, I think you might actually make it. Make it to what? To being someone worth Genevieve's sacrifice. 8 hours remained until the original ritual time. 8 hours to prepare for Klaus's first transformation in 1,000 years. 8 hours for Mystic Falls to return to its normal level of supernatural chaos. But for now, in a cemetery at dawn, like a monster who'd learned to love looked at a future he'd never imagined possible. And for the first time in a millennium, Klaus Mikaelson felt something he'd thought long dead. Hope. The Salvatore boarding house was quiet, in a way it hadn't been in days. Bonnie had woken an hour after the spell, exhausted but stable. The dimensional barriers had begun restabilizing the moment Ghost Rider left, and the pressure on the other side was already lessening. The dead supernatural beings who'd been pressing against the veil were settling back into their purgatory, and the hallucinations plaguing Mystic Falls residents had stopped. Elena sat on the porch swing, watching the sunrise paint the Virginia sky in shades of gold and pink. Beside her, Stefan held her hand, both of them processing the impossible events of the past 48 hours. We did it, Elena said quietly. We actually saved everyone. Not everyone. Stefan's voice was gentle but honest. Jenna still needs to complete her transition. Klaus still has to perform part of the ritual, the werewolf and vampire sacrifices, and his first transformation happens tonight. But I'm alive. That's more than I thought possible yesterday. Inside, Damon was raiding the bourbon cabinet with Caroline, both of them drinking to celebrate survival. Tyler had returned to the boarding house after learning the curse was broken, his sire bond to Klaus officially severed by the magical restructuring, and Klaus himself sat in Alaric's old study with Elijah and Rebecca, preparing for what came next. We have the werewolf, Elijah said, reviewing the ritual components. Jules, one of Tyler's pack members who volunteered. We have the vampire. Jenna will transition tonight, and we have the hybrid's transformation during the full moon. The ritual can still proceed, just without Elena's death. Klaus wasn't really listening. He was staring at a painting on the wall, one of his own works from the 1920s depicting a sunset over New Orleans. I can feel it already, the werewolf nature awakening, It's like a part of me that's been sleeping for 1,000 years is waking up. Are you afraid? Rebecca asked. Terrified. I haven't transformed since I was human and killed that werewolf. I don't remember what it feels like, but I remember the screams, the pain, and now it's magnified by vampire nature. Klaus's hands trembled slightly. What if I can't control it? What if the wolf is as much a monster as the vampire? Then we'll be there to help you, Elijah said firmly. Always and forever, brother. That oath means something, especially after what Genevieve sacrificed for you. The mention of Genevieve made Klaus flinch. The witch who'd loved him, who'd given up eternal peace for his redemption, now trapped in the liminal space between life and death. The weight of that sacrifice was crushing. I don't deserve what she did for me, Klaus said quietly. Probably not, Rebecca agreed, but you have it anyway. Now you have to figure out how to honor it. A knock at the door interrupted them. Caroline entered, looking uncomfortable. Klaus, there's someone here to see you. She says it's important. Klaus followed Caroline to the main room where an unfamiliar woman stood waiting. She was in her 30s, human with kind eyes and an air of quiet strength. Mr. Mikaelson, she said, my name is Sarah Salvatore. I'm Stefan's distant descendant, one of the few living members of his original human family line. Klaus was immediately wary. What do you want? I want to thank you. At Klaus's shocked expression, she continued, I know what you did. Breaking your curse to save Elena Gilbert, accepting a sacrifice that cost a witch her peace. My family, Stefan and Damon, they told me everything. And I wanted you to know that even people you've never met, people whose lives you've never touched directly, are grateful you chose differently. Klaus didn't know what to say. He'd expected threats, demands for reparations, anger, not gratitude. I don't understand. I've hurt Stefan, tormented Damon, put your entire family line at risk multiple times. Why would you thank me? Sarah smiled gently. Because you had the power to choose evil and chose good instead. That's rare, especially for someone as old and powerful as you. And because my children will grow up in a world where Elena Gilbert lived, where Klaus Mikaelson learned to be better. That matters. She left before Klaus could respond, leaving him staring after her with an expression of profound confusion. Caroline had watched the entire exchange. That bothered you more than insults would have. Of course it did. I know how to handle hatred. I've spent 1,000 years earning it. But gratitude, forgiveness from people I don't even know. Klaus shook his head. How do I live up to that? You don't. Not immediately. You just try to deserve it more each day than you did the day before. Caroline's voice softened slightly. You're going to screw up, Klaus. You're going to have moments where the old patterns resurface. The important thing is what you do when that happens. From the doorway, Camille appeared. She's right. Therapy isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming aware. You'll still have impulses to control, to violence, to the patterns you've built over a millennium. The difference is now you'll recognize them and have the tools to choose differently. Will you stay? Klaus asked her. In Mystic Falls? I could use continued therapy. Apparently, I have significant issues to work through. Camille considered. I'll stay for a few months, help you establish healthier patterns. But Klaus, eventually you'll need to do this work yourself. I can guide, but I can't fix you. Only you can do that. I understand. Thank you. Bonnie appeared at the top of the stairs. Still pale, but mobile. The ancestors just sent me a message. Genevieve wants to speak with you, Klaus. One more time before she settles into her new existence. Klaus's expression shifted to something painful. How? She sacrificed her peace. I thought she'd be lost. She is lost, but not gone. The liminal space she occupies allows brief communication. It's not easy, and it hurts her to do it, but she insisted. Bonnie's voice was hard. Don't make her sacrifice mean nothing. Listen to what she has to say. They moved to the basement, where Bonnie set up a smaller version of the summoning circle. The spell was quicker this time, requiring less power since Genevieve was already in the between space. The witch appeared, even more translucent than before, her form flickering like a candle in wind. But her eyes were still clear, still focused on Klaus. "Niklaus," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "I don't have long. The between space doesn't allow for extended presence. Genevieve, I'm so sorry. What you sacrificed for me was my choice. Stop apologizing and listen." Her voice was firm, despite the pain clearly costing her to manifest. "I've been watching from the between space. I saw how you struggled with Camille's therapy, how you're trying to understand love and connection. I need you to understand something." "What?" "The sacrifice I made wasn't about love for you. Not entirely." Genevieve's expression was complex. "I loved you once, yes, but that was a lifetime ago, literally. What I sacrificed for was the possibility that even the worst among us can change. Because if you can become better, Klaus, then maybe there's hope for all the monsters. Maybe redemption isn't just a fantasy." Klaus absorbed this. So it was about hope, not love. It was about both. Love for the person you might become. Hope that change is possible. And yes, some lingering affection for the man who compelled me because seeing my fear hurt him. She smiled slightly. "You've always been complicated, Niklaus. That hasn't changed. What should I do now? How do I honor what you've given up? Live. Really live, not just exist. Connect with people. Love them. Let them love you back. Make choices that would make that innocent girl, Jenna, proud that her life was spared." Genevieve's form was fading faster. "And Niklaus, forgive yourself. Eventually. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. Carrying all that guilt forever helps no one. I don't know if I can." "Then learn. You learned how to be a monster. Well, you can learn how to be human again." Her voice was barely a whisper now. "Goodbye, Niklaus. Make it count." And she was gone, returned to the between space where she'd exist for eternity, watching, waiting, never at peace but also never truly suffering. A sacrifice in the truest sense. Klaus stood in the empty circle for a long moment, tears of blood streaming down his face. Then he looked at Bonnie. "Thank you for giving me the chance to speak with her." "Don't thank me. Thank Genevieve. She's the one paying the price." Bonnie's expression softened slightly. "But Klaus, she's right. Make it count. Don't waste what she gave you." "I won't. I swear it." They returned upstairs, where the group had grown. Jeremy had arrived with Matt and Tyler. Alaric, Elena's guardian, currently human but with his own complicated supernatural history, stood near the fireplace. Even the sheriff, Caroline's mother, had stopped by to assess the situation. "The town is settling," Sheriff Forbes reported. "The hallucinations have stopped, and people are chalking up the last 2 days to mass hysteria or gas leaks or whatever explanation lets them sleep at night. The dimensional barriers are almost fully restored," Bonnie added. "By tonight, the other side will be stable again. Ghost Rider's departure saved us." "Speaking of tonight," Tyler said, "Klaus, you're transforming for the first time in 1,000 years. Where are you planning to do that? Because if you're anywhere near town, people will hear the screams." "The quarry," Elijah answered. "The same place the original ritual was planned. And it's remote enough that the transformation won't draw attention, and we've prepared restraints in case Klaus's wolf nature proves difficult to control." Klaus looked at the people gathered. His siblings, his former enemies, people who'd helped him despite having every reason not to. "I don't expect any of you to attend the transformation. It's going to be violent and painful and not something I'd wish anyone to witness." "We're coming anyway," Stefan said. "Someone needs to make sure you don't eat anyone important." And we need to be there for Jenna's transition, Elena added quietly. She deserves to have family with her when she completes the turn. The mood in the room shifted. Jenna Summers would die tonight, become a vampire, and then die again as the vampire sacrifice for Klaus's ritual. And she'd known this was coming ever since Klaus had turned her, had made peace with it as much as anyone could, but it didn't make it any easier. "Where is Jenna now?" Klaus asked. "Saying goodbye to Jeremy and Elena," Alaric said, his voice tight. "Trying to make the most of the time she has left." "This is my fault," Klaus said. "If I'd found another way sooner, if I'd been better, if you spiral into guilt, you dishonor Genevieve's sacrifice," Camille interrupted. "Yes, Jenna's death is a consequence of your actions. Yes, it's tragic, but you can't change it now. You can only move forward and make sure future choices don't create more Jennas." Klaus nodded, accepting the harsh truth. "You're right. I can't save everyone, but I can stop adding to the body count." The day passed in preparation and quiet goodbyes, and Jenna spent time with Jeremy and Elena, creating last memories. The Salvatore brothers prepared the quarry with chains and reinforced barriers in case Klaus's wolf form proved uncontrollable. Bonnie rested, recovering her magical strength, and Klaus sat with Camille, processing emotions he'd spent a millennium avoiding. As sunset approached, the group assembled at the quarry. The full moon was rising, huge and orange on the horizon. Jules, the werewolf volunteer, was already chained to one of the stone pillars, having agreed to her role in the ritual. Jenna stood nearby, her new vampire nature making her nervous and twitchy. "I'm scared," Jenna admitted to Elena. "I've only been a vampire for a day and now I'm going to die. What if there's nothing after? What if I just end?" Elena hugged her aunt tightly. "You won't end. And Bonnie says vampires go to the other side. You'll be there, and someday we'll see you again. Take care of Jeremy. Make sure he finishes school, goes to college, has a normal life." "I will, I promise." Klaus approached them, his expression pained. "Jenna, I cannot adequately express how sorry I am for what's about to happen, for what I've done to you." Jenna looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the genuine remorse in his eyes. "You changed at the last moment, but you changed. You saved Elena. That matters, Klaus. It doesn't erase what you've done, but it matters. Your forgiveness is more than I deserve." "Probably, but I'm giving it anyway, because holding on to hatred when I have minutes left to live seems like a waste of time." Jenna smiled sadly. "Besides, no, if my death means Elena lives and you become someone better, then maybe it means something. Maybe it's not just pointless violence." Klaus had no words. He simply bowed his head in acknowledgement of her grace. Elijah checked his watch. "It's time. The moon is fully risen. Klaus, you should prepare." Klaus moved to the center of the ritual space, where ancient symbols had been carved into stone. He could feel it already, the werewolf curse activating, his bones beginning to ache with the promise of transformation. "Once I start transforming," Klaus said, "I won't be in control. The chains are spelled to hold a hybrid, but if they fail..." "We'll handle it," Damon said, loading a crossbow with wooden bolts. "We've got Vervain, Wolfsbane, and Stefan's annoying heroism. We'll be fine." The transformation began. But Klaus screamed as his bones started breaking and reforming. 1,000 years since his last transformation, and the vampire nature made it infinitely worse. His hybrid body was fighting itself, vampire healing, trying to repair what the werewolf curse was deliberately breaking. It was agony beyond description. His spine cracked and reshaped, his jaw extended into a muzzle. Fur burst through skin that tried simultaneously to heal and transform, and through it all, Klaus screamed. Not words, but pure animal pain. The others watched in horror. Even Damon, who'd seen centuries of supernatural violence, looked disturbed. This wasn't death or torture. This was nature itself, warring within one body. After what felt like hours, but was only minutes, the transformation completed. Where Klaus had been, a massive wolf now stood, bigger than natural, and with eyes that glowed with both amber werewolf power and the red tinge of vampire nature. A true hybrid in wolf form. The wolf tested its chains, snarling. It looked at the gathered humans and vampires with clear predatory interest. Then its gaze fell on Jules, the werewolf sacrifice. This was the moment of truth. Would Klaus's conscious mind retain any control, or was the wolf purely instinct and hunger? The hybrid wolf approached Jules slowly. She met its eyes without flinching, accepting her role in the ritual. "It's okay," she whispered. "I volunteered. I know what this means." The wolf paused. In its eyes, something flickered. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. Then it moved with brutal efficiency, ending Jules' life quickly rather than drawing out her suffering. The ritual magic activated, absorbing her death as the werewolf sacrifice. Next came Jenna. She stood ready, Elena crying silently beside her. The hybrid wolf turned to her, and again, that flicker of recognition, of regret. Jenna closed her eyes. "Make it quick, please." The wolf did. One strike, precise and merciful. Jenna fell, and the ritual magic claimed her as the vampire sacrifice. The hybrid curse, already broken by Genevieve's sacrifice, completed its transformation. Klaus's werewolf nature fully integrated with his vampire self, no longer bound or suppressed. He was complete. The wolf collapsed, the transformation reversing now that the ritual was finished. Bones cracked again, reshaping back to human form. Fur receded, and Klaus lay naked and gasping on the stone, his body covered in blood and sweat. Rebecca was there instantly with a blanket, covering him. "Nick, are you back? Are you in control?" Klaus's eyes opened. Still that distinctive hybrid gold amber, but aware. Human. I'm myself. The wolf, I could feel it. Feel its instincts, but I stayed aware. I stayed me. "You made their deaths quick," Stefan observed. "Merciful. That was you choosing, not the wolf acting on instinct. It was the least I could do." Klaus sat up slowly, his body still healing from the transformation trauma. He looked at where Jenna's body lay, Elena kneeling beside it. "Another death on my conscience, another face that will haunt me." "But the last one," Bonnie said firmly. "If you meant what you said about changing, Jenna Summers is the last innocent who dies because of Klaus Mikaelson's choices." Klaus met her eyes. "I swear it. On Genevieve's sacrifice, on my family's oath, and on whatever shred of honor I have left, I swear it." The quarry fell silent except for Elena's quiet crying and the sound of the night wind through the trees. The ritual was complete. The curse was broken. Klaus Mikaelson was a true hybrid. And in the process, he'd become something else too. A monster trying desperately to be a man. Alaric moved to Elena's side, comforting her over Jenna's body. The others began cleaning up the ritual space, preparing to move Jenna and Jules to proper resting places. Klaus stood on shaky legs, the blanket wrapped around him, looking at the full moon that had triggered his first transformation in a millennium. He felt complete in a way he'd never experienced. Vampire and werewolf in perfect balance, no longer at war within himself. But the completeness came with a price. Genevieve's eternal waiting, and Jenna's death, Jules' sacrifice, 3 lives spent to give him freedom. "Make it count," Genevieve's words echoed in his memory. "Make it count." Klaus looked at his siblings, at the Salvatoris, at Carolyn and Bonnie and Tyler, and all the people who'd helped him despite everything. "Thank you," he said simply. "All of you, for giving me a chance I didn't deserve. Don't make us regret it," Damon said, his usual sarcasm gentler than normal. I'll try not to. As they prepared to leave the quarry, Klaus took one last look at the stone circle where his curse had been broken, and his redemption had truly begun. Tomorrow, he would wake up as a hybrid with no supernatural restraints and 1,000 years of sins to atone for. Tomorrow, he would begin the impossible work of becoming someone worthy of the sacrifices made for him. Tomorrow, Klaus Mikaelson would try to be better, but tonight, he allowed himself to simply feel grief and guilt and gratitude and hope, all tangled together in the complicated mess that was learning to be human again. And somewhere in the between space, Genevieve watched and waited, hoping her sacrifice hadn't been in vain. 3 weeks after the ritual, Mystic Falls had returned to its version of normal, which was to say, supernatural chaos with brief interludes of peace. Klaus had left town after the transformation, heading to New Orleans with Elijah and Rebecca to reconnect with the city he'd once called home. Before departing, he'd made arrangements, financial reparations to the families of his victims who still lived in Mystic Falls, a donation to rebuild the church he destroyed, and a promise to Stefan that he'd check in regularly to prove he was staying on his redemptive path. Camille had gone with them, continuing Klaus's therapy in the city where his complicated relationship with humanity had first begun to crack. The reports that filtered back to Mystic Falls suggested Klaus was struggling, old patterns warring with new intentions, but he was trying. The Salvatore boarding house had become something of a supernatural community center in the aftermath. Tonight, the usual group had gathered. Stefan and Elena on the couch, Caroline and Tyler by the fireplace, Bonnie at the desk surrounded by grimoires, and Damon raiding the bourbon cabinet as always. "So Klaus has been in New Orleans for 3 weeks," Caroline said, scrolling through her phone. "He sent me a text yesterday. Apparently he's taking art classes. Actually sitting in a room with humans and learning from a teacher instead of just compelling people to tell him he's brilliant." "Character growth," Damon said with mock enthusiasm. "How touching. Should we throw him a parade?" "Damon, be nice," Elena chided. "Klaus saved my life. He's trying." "He saved your life after planning to kill you for months. Now, let's not nominate him for sainthood just yet." Stefan intervened before the argument could escalate. "Any word on Ghost Rider? Has he appeared in any other dimension or location?" Bonnie shook her head. "My ancestors say he returned to his own hell and hasn't left since. Johnny Blaze and the Spirit of Vengeance are still fighting for control. But what happened here, witnessing Klaus's redemption, changed something in both of them." "Changed how?" Tyler asked. "The Spirit of Vengeance learned that absolute judgment isn't always justice, and Johnny Blaze learned that sometimes mercy is the hardest choice to make. They're evolving, I guess. Becoming something neither judgment nor vengeance, but some third thing." "What thing?" "The ancestors aren't sure, but they think Ghost Rider might become something like a guardian, still hunting the guilty, but also offering the possibility of redemption. Judgment with mercy." The concept settled over the group. The idea that even something as absolute as the Spirit of Vengeance could change gave weight to Klaus's journey. "What about Genevieve?" Elena asked quietly. "Is she okay? Can someone in the between space be okay?" Bonnie's expression was complicated. "She's not suffering." "Not exactly. She exists in the liminal space, aware but not quite present. She can observe our world and the other side, but can't fully interact with either. She struggled for words. "It's like being a ghost watching 2 movies simultaneously for eternity." "That sounds like hell." "Maybe. Or maybe it's its own kind of purpose. You know, she gets to watch Klaus's redemption play out, see if her sacrifice meant something. That might be enough." A knock at the door interrupted the conversation. Stefan answered it to find an unexpected visitor, Mikael, the original vampire hunter, and Klaus's abusive father. The room went into instant defensive mode. Vampires vamped out. Bonnie's hands glowed with magic. Tyler's eyes flashed werewolf amber. Mikael raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. I'm not here to fight. I'm here because I felt the hybrid curse break. I felt my son become complete. You mean you felt your victim become strong enough to actually fight back? Damon said coldly. Mikael's expression was complicated. Centuries of hatred warring with something else. I've spent 1,000 years hunting Klaus, wanting him dead for being an abomination, for killing my wife, and for existing as a reminder of Esther's betrayal. But 3 weeks ago, something changed. What changed? Stefan asked warily. I felt his transformation, felt him integrate his werewolf and vampire natures. And for the first time in a millennium, I didn't feel rage. Mikael's voice was rough. I felt nothing. The hatred that's driven me for 1,000 years just evaporated. Bonnie's ancestral senses flared. The curse breaking affected you. You've been magically bound to hunt Klaus since Esther first created the hybrid curse. When it shattered, so did your supernatural compulsion to destroy him. Are you saying Mikael didn't actually want to kill Klaus all this time? Caroline's voice was incredulous. That it was just a spell. Not just a spell. The hatred was real. Esther made sure of that. But the binding wove supernatural compulsion into parental rejection. Mikael couldn't not hunt Klaus even if part of him had wanted to stop. Bonnie studied the ancient vampire. Now the compulsion is gone. What you feel or don't feel is actually you. Mikael sat heavily, looking older than his centuries despite his vampire nature. I don't know what to feel. Klaus is he's Esther's son. Not mine biologically, but I raised him as mine until I discovered the truth. And then I hated him with everything I was. But now that hatred is gone and there's just emptiness where it used to be. Why are you here? Elena asked, not unkindly. Because Klaus isn't in Mystic Falls anymore, and I needed to tell someone what I'd realized. Needed witnesses to the fact that I, Mikael, the Destroyer, am the vampire who hunted his own son for 1,000 years. I'm done. The hunt is over. Just like that. Damon was skeptical. Just like that. I felt the curse break, felt the compulsion shatter, and realized I have no purpose anymore. 1,000 years of single-minded focus, gone in an instant. Mikael looked at each of them. What does one do when the driving force of their existence simply ends? You find a new purpose, Stefan said quietly. You choose who you want to be instead of being defined by what you were, like Klaus is doing. Exactly like Klaus is doing. Mikael stood, preparing to leave. If you speak to him, to Klaus, tell him I won't be hunting him anymore. Not because I forgive him or love him, but because I simply can't. See, the magic that made me his eternal enemy is gone. You could tell him yourself, Caroline suggested. He's in New Orleans. A conversation might give you both closure. Maybe, someday, but not yet. I need to figure out who Mikael is when he's not defined by hunting Klaus Mikaelson. He moved toward the door, then paused. There was a demon, a spirit of vengeance. I felt its presence 3 weeks ago, judging Klaus. What happened? Klaus proved himself capable of change, Bonnie said. He found redemption through sacrifice and willing love. The spirit of vengeance let him go. Mikael absorbed this. Then perhaps there's hope for all of us monsters. Even me. He left, disappearing into the night with vampire speed. The group sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then Damon laughed, sharp and disbelieving. Did Mikael just have a redemption moment? Is everyone in the original family getting therapy now? It's not redemption, Stefan corrected. It's the absence of supernatural hatred. What Mikael does with that absence is up to him. Elena's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and smiled. It's Klaus. He wants to video chat with everyone. Should I answer? Why not? Caroline shrugged. If we're all getting closure tonight, might as well include the hybrid. Elena connected the call, propping her phone against a stack of books so everyone could see. Klaus's face appeared on screen, looking healthier than he had in weeks, or behind him, the New Orleans skyline was visible through large windows. "Good evening," Klaus said, his accent carrying through the phone speaker. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Your timing is impeccable," Damon said. "As your father just left. He's decided to stop hunting you." Klaus's expression cycled through shock, disbelief, and something that might have been relief. Mikael was there. "Is everyone all right?" "Everyone's fine. The curse breaking apparently broke his supernatural compulsion to hunt you. He's having an existential crisis about what to do with himself now." I don't know what to say. I've spent 1,000 years running from him." "Say thank you to Genevieve," Bonnie suggested. "Her sacrifice didn't just break your curse, it broke the cycle of hatred between you and your father." Klaus was quiet for a moment. Then, "I visit the between space every night, speak to Genevieve through Camille's mediation spell. I tell her about the progress I'm making, the choices I'm trying to get right, the moments I fail. She listens. She's always listening." "How is the therapy going?" Caroline asked. "Terribly and wonderfully. Camille is relentless about making me confront my patterns. I've had more emotional breakdowns in 3 weeks than in the previous 1,000 years combined." Klaus smiled slightly. "But I'm learning. About empathy, about genuine connection, about what love actually means versus what I thought it meant." "And the art classes?" Elena asked. "Humbling. I've spent centuries thinking myself a master, but learning from a human teacher who has no idea I'm a vampire, who critiques my work honestly without fear. It's remarkable. I painted something yesterday that wasn't about pain or rage. It was just beautiful. That felt revolutionary." Stefan spoke up. "Klaus, we heard about the reparations you made, the families you helped. That wasn't necessary." "It was absolutely necessary. I can't undo 1,000 years of damage, but I can try to help the living victims and their descendants. It's inadequate, but it's something." Through the phone, Rebecca appeared in the background. "Nick, Camille says your session starts in 10 minutes. You should wrap up." I know. Klaus's attention returned to the phone. "I wanted to check in. Make sure Mystic Falls survived my absence, and make sure you all knew I was keeping my promises." "We know," Stefan said. "Keep working on yourself, Klaus. Keep choosing to be better. Every day. Some days I fail, but I'm trying." Klaus paused. "There's something else. Camille and I have been discussing the possibility of me turning myself into vampire authorities for my past crimes. Not human authorities, they wouldn't understand, but there are supernatural councils that handle justice for immortals." The group exchanged surprised looks. "You want to face trial?" Bonnie asked. "I want accountability, real accountability, not just self-flagellation and guilt. Camille thinks it might be an important step in my redemption. Facing my victims' descendants, hearing impact statements, accepting consequences." Klaus's voice was uncertain. "I don't know if it's the right choice, but I'm considering it." "That's incredibly brave," Elena said. "And terrifying." "Yes to both. But Genevieve sacrificed her peace for my redemption. The least I can do is actually pursue that redemption with everything I have, even when it's terrifying." Elijah appeared on screen beside Klaus. "We'll support him through whatever he decides. He always and forever." "Thank you all," Klaus said, "for giving me a chance when you had no reason to, for helping me become someone who might actually deserve Genevieve's sacrifice someday. I know I have centuries of work ahead of me, but you're doing it," Caroline interrupted. "That's what matters. Not perfection, just persistent effort." "Precisely. Now I should go. Camille waits for no hybrid, and she's particularly ruthless when I'm late for therapy." Klaus's expression softened. "Take care of each other. I'll check in again next week." The call ended. The group sat in contemplative silence. Finally, Tyler spoke. "Did we just witness Klaus Mikaelson voluntarily going to therapy and considering turning himself in for his crimes? Is this real?" "It's real," Bonnie confirmed. "So my ancestors are watching him through the ancestral plane. His aura has changed. Still dark from centuries of violence, but shot through with genuine intention to be better. It's remarkable." "And Ghost Rider?" Elena asked. "If he could see Klaus now, what would he think?" Bonnie closed her eyes, reaching out to her ancestral connection. The Bennett witches who existed in the between space, the same realm where Genevieve watched eternally, could sometimes sense across dimensional barriers. When Bonnie opened her eyes again, she was smiling. The ancestors say Ghost Rider is watching too. Johnny Blaze and the Spirit of Vengeance, observing Klaus's redemption from their own hell dimension, and they're satisfied. Not happy. They're entities of judgment, like not joy, but satisfied that Klaus is honoring the sacrifice made for him. "Will Ghost Rider ever come back?" Tyler asked. "Maybe. If Klaus backslides completely, if he betrays everything Genevieve gave up for him, Johnny Blaze has promised to return and finish the judgment. But as long as Klaus keeps trying, keeps choosing to be better even when he fails, Ghost Rider will stay in his own dimension. So we're safe from flaming skull demons?" Damon raised his bourbon glass. "I'll drink to that." "For now," Stefan said. "But there's always another supernatural crisis waiting in Mystic Falls." "Then let's enjoy the peace while it lasts," Caroline suggested. "We saved Elena, helped Klaus find redemption, sent Ghost Rider home, stabilized the dimensional barriers, and somehow survived another apocalypse. That deserves celebration." They spent the rest of the evening in comfortable companionship, sharing stories, processing the insanity of the past weeks, and simply being together, the supernatural family they'd built through crisis and choice, stronger for the challenges they'd survived. As midnight approached and the group began to disperse, Elena stood on the boarding house porch looking up at the stars. Stefan joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "I'm alive. Jenna's gone, but I'm alive." Klaus changed. Ghost Rider left. Reality didn't collapse. And somehow, impossibly, there's hope that even the worst monsters can become something better. Elena leaned into Stefan's embrace. "Yeah, I think I'm okay. Good. Because tomorrow, we're back to normal Mystic Falls problems. Vampire drama, werewolf politics, and whatever new supernatural crisis is brewing." "Can't wait," Elena said with gentle sarcasm. Inside, Bonnie was gathering her grimoires when she felt it. A presence in the between space reaching out. Genevieve communicating across the barrier between existence and limbo. The message was wordless, more feeling than language. But Bonnie understood. Gratitude. Klaus was honoring the sacrifice. The redemption was real. And somewhere in the eternal waiting, Genevieve had found her own kind of peace, purpose in watching what her choice had made possible. Bonnie whispered a response into the ether. "He won't waste what you gave him. I'll make sure of it." The presence faded, but the gratitude lingered. And in New Orleans, Klaus sat across from Camille in their therapy session, on working through another layer of trauma and pattern breaking. The work was hard. Some days, he wanted to quit, to return to the easy certainty of being a monster. But then, he would think of Genevieve in the between space, watching and waiting. Of Elena, alive because he'd chosen differently. Of his siblings, believing in him despite centuries of betrayal. Of Mikael, no longer hunting him because the curse that fueled their hatred had shattered. And Klaus would choose to keep trying. One day at a time, one choice at a time. One small step toward becoming someone worthy of redemption. In his own hell dimension, Ghost Rider patrolled streets of flame and damnation. But Johnny Blaze's consciousness was stronger now, more present. The spirit of vengeance had learned that justice could include mercy, that judgment could coexist with hope. But they would continue their work, hunting the guilty, punishing the wicked. But now, occasionally, they would also offer a chance at redemption. A path through the flames instead of just burning forever, because they'd seen it work. Seen a monster become a man through sacrifice and choice and persistent effort. And if Klaus Mikaelson could change, then maybe anyone could. Even a spirit of vengeance bound to a human soul. Even a 1,000-year-old vampire hunter driven by supernatural hatred. Even the broken, the damned, the seemingly irredeemable. Change was possible. Redemption was real. And in Mystic Falls, Virginia, a group of supernatural beings and their human friends had proven it. 6 months later, Mystic Falls prepared for its annual Founders' Day celebration. The town square was decorated with banners and booths, historical reenactors in period costume mingled with tourists, and the usual supernatural population watched from the shadows, amused by how humans celebrated a history they didn't fully understand. Elena and Stefan walked hand in hand through the festival, both of them marveling at how normal everything felt. No immediate apocalypse, no ancient evil awakening. Just a small Virginia town celebrating its history. I keep waiting for something terrible to happen, Elena admitted. It's been too quiet. Don't jinx it, Stefan said with a smile. Maybe we've earned a little peace. Near the Gilbert booth, Jeremy was helping Bonnie with a magical demonstration, real magic disguised as stage tricks for the tourists. Carolyn and Tyler were running the games section, their relationship having stabilized into something genuine and supportive. Matt Donovan served food at the grill's booth, the perpetual human anchor in their supernatural chaos. And in the crowd, walking with careful deliberation, was Klaus. He'd returned to Mystic Falls a week ago, checking in on his promises and facing the town he'd terrorized. The reception had been mixed. Some people crossed the street to avoid him. Others watched him warily. A few, like the Salvatore brothers, had cautiously welcomed him back. Klaus wore his humanity more comfortably now, though the effort still showed. 6 months of intensive therapy with Camille had taught him healthier patterns, but breaking 1,000 years of destructive behavior was ongoing work. He approached the Salvatore booth, where Damon was selling bourbon-infused pastries. Because if it's not alcoholic, what's the point? Damon, Klaus greeted. Klaus, still among the living dead, I see. How's the redemption tour going? Exhausting, humbling, occasionally rewarding. Klaus purchased one of the pastries. I attended my first supernatural tribunal last month, faced testimony from descendants of my victims. It was brutal. Did they lock you up? Probation. 5 years of community service to supernatural communities I've damaged. Monthly check-ins with an elder vampire council and continued therapy. If I violate terms, I face imprisonment in a magical containment facility. Damon actually looked impressed. And you voluntarily signed up for supernatural probation. That's commitment to this whole being better thing. It's the least I can do. Klaus looked around the festival. Is Caroline here? I wanted to thank her for the letter she sent. Her perspective on my progress was meaningful. She's at the games booth. Fair warning, Tyler is with her, and he's still not your biggest fan. Understandable. Klaus made his way through the crowd, noting how people reacted to him. Some with fear, some with curiosity, a few with what might have been cautious acceptance. It was better than the universal hatred he'd have received 6 months ago. At the games booth, Caroline and Tyler were laughing together, setting up a ring toss. Caroline spotted Klaus first, and her expression shifted to something complicated, but not hostile. Klaus, and you came back. I did. I'm working through my list of amends, and Mystic Falls is central to that process. Klaus's voice was sincere, without his usual manipulation. Caroline, I wanted to thank you for the letter you sent to the tribunal. Your testimony about my capacity for change, it made a difference. Caroline glanced at Tyler, who was watching Klaus with wary eyes. I told the truth. You've been trying. That doesn't erase what you did, but it's something. It's everything, Klaus corrected. Without people willing to witness my efforts, redemption would be impossible. Tyler stepped forward. Klaus, I'm not going to pretend we're friends. You killed me, turned me into a hybrid against my will, made my life hell for months. I know. I'm deeply sorry for that. Let me finish. Tyler's voice was firm. You did all that. But you also saved Caroline's life last month when that vampire from your past came hunting for revenge. And you turned yourself into the tribunal instead of running. Those actions matter. I don't forgive you, but I see that you're trying. That's more than I expected. Klaus absorbed this, the weight of partial acceptance heavier than he'd anticipated. Thank you, Tyler. That means more than you know. As Klaus moved on, Caroline whispered to Tyler, that was big of you. He killed my mom. I'm never going to be okay with that. But Genevieve gave up everything for his redemption. The least I can do is not actively sabotage it. Near the Bennett booth, Klaus encountered Bonnie, who was demonstrating telekinesis, actually just using magic, to a group of entertained children. Miss Bennett, Klaus greeted when she'd finished. Bonnie studied him with her witch senses, reading his aura. You're doing better. The darkness is still there. It always will be. But it's not consuming you anymore. Thanks to Camille and the work she's helping me do. Klaus hesitated. I wanted to ask about Genevieve. How is she? The same. Watching, waiting, existing in the between space. She's aware of your progress. The ancestors say she's satisfied isn't the right word. Content, maybe. She made her choice knowing what it would cost, and she doesn't regret it. I visit her every week through Camille's mediation spell. Tell her about my progress, my failures, the people I've tried to make amends with. Klaus's voice was quiet. Some days, I think I feel her respond. Other days, I wonder if I'm just talking to myself. She hears you, Bonnie said with certainty. And for what it's worth, Klaus, you're honoring her sacrifice. That's all anyone can do. Is it enough? For her? Yes. For the universe? Ask me in another 6 months. Klaus smiled slightly at that. The first genuine smile many people had seen from him. Not the charming manipulation or cruel amusement of old, but actual warmth. As the festival continued, Klaus found himself at the edge of the celebration, watching humans and supernatural beings coexist in careful balance. He'd spent 1,000 years seeing humans as food or tools. Now he was trying to see them as people deserving of respect and dignity. It was still hard. Some days, the old patterns called to him, the ease of compulsion, the thrill of violence, the security of being feared rather than trying to be loved. But he resisted. Because Genevieve was watching, because his siblings believed in him, because he'd promised Ghost Rider he'd be better. Speaking of which, Klaus felt it before he saw it. That distinctive presence of judgment and hellfire. He turned to find Ghost Rider standing at the festival's edge. Not in flames this time, but manifested as Johnny Blaze in human form. Leather jacket, haunted eyes, but recognizably human rather than demonic. Johnny Blaze, Klaus greeted carefully. I wasn't expecting you. I'm not here as Ghost Rider, Johnny said, his voice rough but human. I'm here as Johnny, just checking in on the monster who learned to be better. Am I better? Better than you were. Still have a long way to go. Johnny looked around the festival. I've been watching from my dimension. The tribunal, the therapy, the amends. You're doing the work. Because you'll come back if I don't. Maybe. But I think you'd keep doing it even if I wasn't watching. That's the difference. Johnny's expression was complicated. You know what Genevieve's sacrifice taught me? What? That the spirit of vengeance was wrong. Absolute judgment without mercy isn't justice. It's just cruelty wearing righteousness as a mask. Real justice includes the possibility of redemption even for the worst among us. Klaus absorbed this. Is that why you're here? To tell me I'm forgiven? Hell no. You're not forgiven. You've got centuries of damage to atone for, and forgiveness isn't mine to give. It belongs to your victims and their descendants. Johnny's voice was hard, but not cruel. But you're on the right path. That's what I came to say. Keep walking it. And if I stumble, and if I make mistakes, then you get back up and keep trying. That's what growth looks like. Not perfection, but persistent effort despite failures. Johnny pulled out a worn photograph from his jacket, a picture of himself before becoming Ghost Rider, young and hopeful. I was human once. Made a deal with a demon because I was desperate to save my father. That deal bound me to the spirit of vengeance, made me hunt and judge for decades. I hated it. Hated what I'd become. But you're still bonded. Yeah. But watching your redemption, seeing that even Klaus Mikaelson can choose to change, it gave me hope. The spirit and I, we're finding a balance. I'm not just its vessel anymore. We're becoming partners, judgment with mercy, justice with understanding. Klaus understood the parallel. We're both learning to be more than our curses. Exactly. Johnny extended his hand. So keep doing the work, Klaus. For Genevieve, for your victims, for yourself, and know that someone who was also damned is rooting for you. Klaus shook his hand, the gesture meaningful in its simplicity. No compulsion, no supernatural power play, just two beings who'd been monsters trying to be something better. Johnny Blaze walked back toward the festival's edge and simply disappeared. Not in flames this time, but fading like morning mist, returning to whatever balance he'd found with the spirit of vengeance. Elena had been watching the exchange from a distance. She approached Klaus carefully. Was that Ghost Rider? Johnny Blaze, the human half. He came to check on my progress. And he thinks I'm on the right path, as though he was careful to note that doesn't mean forgiveness. Klaus looked at Elena, the innocent he'd planned to kill, who now stood as living proof of his capacity for change. I owe you my life, Elena Gilbert. If you hadn't forced me to confront the possibility that I could be better, I'd be dead or destroyed by now. You owe Genevieve your life, Elena corrected. I just helped you find the path to honoring her sacrifice. Nevertheless, thank you. Stefan joined them, carrying cotton candy he'd bought for Elena. Klaus, how does it feel to be back in Mystic Falls? Terrifying, humbling, like standing naked in front of everyone I've ever wronged and waiting for judgment. Klaus smiled slightly. In other words, exactly as uncomfortable as I deserve. Character growth, Damon said, appearing with his usual impeccable timing. So who would have thought Klaus Mikaelson had it in him? Not me, Klaus admitted. But here we are. As the sun began to set over Founders' Day, casting golden light across the festival, Klaus found himself surrounded by people he'd terrorized who were now cautiously accepting his presence. Not forgiveness, that would take decades, maybe centuries, but acknowledgement that he was trying. Caroline and Tyler at the games booth, waving him over to try the ring toss. Bonnie at her magical demonstration, offering him a small smile of encouragement. Stefan and Elena, living proof that his choices could save rather than destroy. Damon, providing sarcastic commentary, but also grudging respect. And in the between space, invisible to everyone but ever present, Genevieve watching over the redemption her sacrifice had made possible. Klaus participated in the festival for another hour. playing games, buying food from local vendors, having conversations without compulsion or manipulation, just existing as someone who was trying to be part of a community rather than a predator hunting through it. As night fell and the festival began to wind down, Klaus found himself alone near the Bennett Memorial, the stone marker honoring the witch line that had protected Mystic Falls for generations. He felt her presence before he saw anything, Genevieve, manifesting just enough for him to sense through the veil between existence and the between space. "Thank you," Klaus whispered to the empty air. "For everything. I'm trying to be worthy of what you gave up." The response was wordless, a feeling more than language, approval, encouragement, and something that might have been pride. But Klaus stood there until the feeling faded, then made his way back to where Elijah and Rebecca waited by the car that would take them back to New Orleans. "How was it?" Rebecca asked. "Difficult, meaningful. A reminder that redemption isn't a destination, but a journey." Klaus looked back at the town square, where Mystic Falls residents were cleaning up after the festival. "I think I'm going to be making this journey for a very long time." "We'll be with you," Elijah said. "Always and forever." "Always and forever," Klaus echoed. As they drove away from Mystic Falls, Klaus looked out the window at the Virginia landscape passing by. 6 months ago, he'd been broken by the Penance stare, shattered by seeing every victim he'd ever claimed. 3 weeks after that, he'd been freed by Genevieve's sacrifice, and now he was something in between. Not the monster he'd been, not yet the man he hoped to become, but someone actively choosing to grow despite the difficulty. It was enough. For now, it was enough. Klaus Mikaelson's story of redemption would continue for years. Some days he'd succeed, making choices that honored Genevieve's sacrifice. Other days he'd fail, old patterns resurfacing before he caught himself and corrected course. But he would keep trying, because a witch who'd loved him once had given up everything to prove that even monsters could change. Because Ghost Rider, the spirit of vengeance itself, had witnessed that change and chosen mercy over absolute judgment. Elena Gilbert lived and thrived, finishing college, building a life that had almost been stolen by supernatural politics. And Stefan and Damon continued their complicated brotherhood, supporting each other through the challenges of immortal existence. Bonnie grew into her power, becoming one of the most formidable Bennett witches in history. Carolyn, Tyler, and the others found their own paths through the supernatural maze. And in the between space, Genevieve watched eternally, satisfied that her sacrifice had broken more than just Klaus's curse. It had broken the cycle of absolute judgment, proving that redemption was possible even for the damned. Ghost Rider returned to his dimension, but Johnny Blaze and the Spirit of Vengeance were forever changed. They continued hunting the guilty, but now they also offered chances at redemption. Judgment tempered with mercy. Justice balanced with hope, because they'd seen it work. And they'd seen a 1,000-year-old monster become a man through sacrifice, love, and persistent choice. And if Klaus Mikaelson could find redemption, then maybe anyone could. Even spirits of vengeance, even ancient hunters, even the broken, the damned, the seemingly irredeemable. In Mystic Falls, Virginia, the truth had been proven. Change is possible, redemption is real, and sometimes the hardest battles are fought not with power, but with choice. Klaus Mikaelson chose to be better, and that choice, more than any magic or curse or supernatural power, was what truly set him free. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.